Yeah.
You can see that when
Okay.
it's on.
And if I speak like that, that's... Yeah.
Well, good morning, colleagues and friends. I see lots of familiar faces and some I don't yet recognise, but good morning, you're all very welcome. This public hearing, which we're very pleased to be putting on this morning, is also being live streamed. So just make sure that all your behaviour that you want on show is on show, and any behaviour that you don't want on show isn't. Okay. My name is Christine Blower, and I'm very pleased to be chairing the public hearing this morning, and I chair this in my capacity as president of ETUCE, which is the European region of Education International. In the European region, we're very pleased to have 11 million trade union members across 131 trade unions in some nearly 50 or so countries. So we're a big and significant organisation as a subset of Education International, and we welcome you here today. And the occasion of our meeting today is really to look at the two-year project that we've been conducting on strengthening the capacity of education trade unions to represent teachers' professional needs in social dialogue and to build the capacity of education trade unions to do this work. A former president of my own organisation in Britain wrote his doctoral thesis on education unions, professional associations or trade unions. And of course, we're very pleased to be vigorously both concerned about professional matters and very concerned about trade unionism. So whilst we militate for pay and conditions of service for our members, significantly we see the professional matters as being very important. And so the project, which we've been running for 2 years, aimed at implementing a resolution passed by member organisations in our Belgrade conference, and the resolution was entitled Empowering Education Trade Unions, the Key to Promoting Quality Education. I pause here because I realise I have failed to tell you the translation channels. I'm very sorry. The interpretation channels are these. French is on 2, English on 3, and Russian on 4. However, I'm not going to go back. You can pick up from now. Thank you very much. So this is the occasion of the end of a 2-year project on empowering education trade unions, the key to promoting quality education. And the resolution that we passed in that conference specifically said there is a dual role of trade unions of providing support to teachers both in relation to terms and conditions of employment and in relation to professional matters, and that we consider ourselves highly competent in both of those areas. And at point 11 in that resolution, we said, it is essential that trade unions are and remain recognised by governments as social partners in a permanent, effective social dialogue with a view to contributing constructively to developing quality education systems and providing an independent view particularly in decision-making on developing education policies, especially on pedagogical issues and on the curriculum. So the breadth of the enthusiasm that we have for education is frankly unlimited. The project, as I said, looked at what professional support teachers in the education sector need and what support education trade unions provide to that. And so in the post-2020 EU strategy on education, the focus is on teachers, should be on teachers, and the teaching profession should definitely be more attractive in terms of recruitment and retention of teachers, and this should be a better supported issue. A highly valued teaching profession, we believe, is a prerequisite for developing high-quality education for all, which is itself, in our view, a precondition for a well-functioning society, for social cohesion, and certainly for democratic citizenship. It's therefore of the utmost importance that we achieve by 2030 a teaching profession that has the well-deserved high status, which we have been militating for over the past decades, and that it is well viewed in both political thinking and in the media. And as part of that, both initial and continuous professional development should be high on our agenda and should be of high quality, must be accessible, affordable, and relevant. And the input of teachers themselves and teacher trade unionists to that programme is very significant. So we know that there has been a negative impact on teaching through the period of the economic crisis, and continuous professional development has certainly suffered under that. So that in the post-2020 strategy, we are certainly looking to make sure that teachers have better career opportunities, high job security, social protection and decent salaries, but also, as we say, that they are properly viewed as a significant group of workers and professionals with decent salaries and decent working conditions. And this does mean that we have to reinforce all of these questions through our collective bargaining arrangements. And this is a prerequisite, we believe, as a guarantee to good salaries, decent pensions, working conditions, an attractive and rewarding profession where the voice of the teacher is evident throughout pedagogical decisions and the development of the curriculum. So with that, I end my opening remarks and my welcome, and I hand over to my colleague Martin Henry, who is with us representing Education International. We're very pleased to have him here, and he will make a few remarks before we go to our first speaker. Thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Christine. Well, that's a firm foundation on which to build. Good morning, bonjour, buongiorno, guten morgen, buenos dias, and I'm sure that there are languages I've missed, but I do accept the plurality of language in the room. I'm Martin Henry, Research Coordinator at Education International, and I've got the pleasure of giving this welcome speech for Deputy General Secretary Haldis Holst, who's been called to an urgent meeting in Malaysia. Education International is the global federation of teacher unions. We're the biggest union federation in the world. Today, EI has a membership of 32.5 million, drawn from 401 affiliate organisations, operating in 174 countries and territories. As a global union, we stand behind a set of professional standards, ethics, conditions, and rights of the teaching profession. We promote a quality education that provides people with the critical knowledge, ability, and skills that are needed to conceptualize questions and solve problems that occur both globally and locally. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the work done to get us thus far. Teachers and their unions have had two distinct roles to play. They stand as arbiters of pay and conditions, taking care of their individual and collective rights. They equally act as the leading professional edge for teachers, providing coherence and clarity to the positions teachers take as autonomous professionals within the education system. This requires engagement with government around all matters related to teacher policy, but also in education policy, as teachers have the best knowledge of what works for students. Of course, there are two strands of union activity, and they're not mutually exclusive. Rather, they're plaited together. Education systems that recognise the primacy of teachers in shaping learning do better than those that don't. After all, no education system can exceed the quality of its teachers. Education International has been at the forefront of both these strands. We provide support for the marginalised and oppressed and protect the rights of teachers through our Human and Trade Union Rights and Equality Unit. We provide leadership and collective expression to the voices of the teachers in our affiliation. We also provide professional leadership and advocacy with our Education, Employment and Research Unit. ETUCE, our European regional, has been instrumental in providing fora and for direction for teachers and their unions in the European region, so that you are able to stand at the centre of professional dialogue. They've provided evidence and guidance for the best road to travel. Christine's already quoted some of the tracks that have been laid down, and this indeed is a track that gives you the ability to move into the future with more confidence and more understanding of the evidence base on which you base your actions. Howard Stevenson's no stranger to us. He worked with us on the excellent Organising, Teaching, Developing the Power of the Profession report, where with Nina Bassia he came up with 7 principles of union renewal. These include connecting the industrial and the professional and controlling the narrative. This meeting allows you to do just that. Education unions are uniquely placed to meet teachers' professional needs. They know more about teachers than anyone because they are teachers. They have access to what teachers think through democratic structures, and they give shape to teachers' collective voice in the national setting. Likewise, we give shape to our affiliates' voice through democratic structures. On World Teachers' Day this year, we will release our triennial report on the global status of teachers in the teaching profession. 114 unions, or 28% of our affiliates, responded, but this number included all of the largest unions. 46 of these 114 responses came from Europe, and that is testament to the work done by ETUCE and by yourselves in organising to make sure that your voice is heard. I'm going to give you some little tasters from the survey because they relate to the topic that you've got on the table today. You can get the report from the website on October the 5th. Across all education levels, between 50 and 57% of responding unions report somewhat of a shortage of teachers. Yet despite this global shortage, nearly half of unions report limitations on collective bargaining, and nearly half of all teachers do not have permanent employment. It's not rocket science. If you want to improve your education systems, you need to reduce precariousness and increase professional support. Yet only 30% of responding unions say that teachers have access to professional development. Of the professional development that is offered, a majority of unions report that it is of poor quality and little value. This public hearing is a unique position to tackle these illogical contradictions in education planning and policy. We know from the latest Education at a Glance that investment in education is on the decline. We also know that the future of work discourse is identifying a greater need to educate students with an emphasis on critical thinking and problem-solving skills. This requires an education workforce that is both stable, employed on permanent contracts, and provided with high-quality CPLD. This should be achievable for advanced economies. The G20 has also highlighted the need for high-quality CPLD. The answer to education complexity is not short-termism and insecure structural arrangements, such as the proliferation of charter schools and out-of-system arrangements we have seen in some European countries. I won't mention any names, but a unified and coherent education system that takes care of all students and all teachers. The issue of teacher and student well-being is also of growing importance. Systems focused only on academic results have proved problematic and have developed a need for a rebalancing that looks at the whole child with whole school approaches and take care of all members of the educational community. None of this can be achieved without partnerships. ETUCE have been a leader in setting up positions and possibilities to develop partnerships across the European Union. I'd like to acknowledge the spirit of partnership exemplified by this meeting. Educational employers, governments, student organisations and international organisations have come together to solve problems and work for systemic improvement. I wish you all a fruitful and productive meeting.
So we thank Martin very much as he leaves the stage, no doubt to go and do very important things in Education International. And on mention of World Teachers' Day, I should just say that I hope all present will acknowledge the importance of World Teachers' Day on October the 5th, and that we will see a significant focus on the issues that we are talking about today. As Martin has said, there are serious questions of teacher shortage everywhere. And one of the ways that we can begin to address that is by the kind of work that's being undertaken for us by Howard Stevenson, whom I now introduce, who is going to speak to the report that's been produced. I draw your attention to page 6 of the report, where it talks about a key issue. The first key issue, it says, is that we need to recruit and prepare high-quality entrants to teaching. We need to retain entrants in the teaching profession and develop teachers throughout their career. And I'm bound to say that although that is absolutely the aspiration, the lived experience of many teachers is 3 rather different things. Recruit, yes, teachers are recruited, but rather than being retained, they are then wrecked or burned out, and rather than being developed, they're then replaced. So we're talking here positively in this report about recruit, retain, and develop, but our experience through our unions is that in many cases it's recruit, wreck, and replace. And Howard, in his remarks and through this report, will talk about how that we can make sure that we really are retaining and developing all of the teachers that we need, having successfully recruited them. The floor is yours, Howard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. Can you hear me? Is that microphone working? No.
But it is now, I think. Yeah? Okay. Christine, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to talk about the research that myself and my colleague Alison Milner and Emily Winchip have been involved in for some time, working with colleagues in ETUCE. What I want to do this morning is really just give you an overview of that research. I think set up some issues which I know you're going to explore in more detail over the course of your deliberations through this morning, and for those of you who are staying on over the next day and a half. And what I hope, in a sense, stimulate discussion and debate about how we address some of the issues that Christine talked about. The research report that you have in front of you is based on work we did in a number of different ways. All your organisations, if you're within ETUCE, were surveyed, and I'm going to say something about the survey responses. At the various workshops that have been part of this project, as a research team we participated in those workshops and we learnt a lot from them. And there are a number of case study countries which we visited as part of the project. If you were in any way involved in those, if you were in any way involved in supporting the work that we've been doing, can I take this opportunity to thank you very much. We're very, very grateful for it. Before I talk about the research findings, and quickly thinking on my feet how I slightly reframe what I'm going to say, because Christine's just said some of the things that I was going to say, but let me add to that. Whoever we are in this room, whether we're representing union organisations, employer organisations, representatives of the European Commission, I'm sure we can agree on the three issues that we put in the report and that Christine has just cited. Whatever the systems that we're involved in, we need to attract high-quality entrants into teaching. The job has to look attractive. It has to be able to retain people in the job. The working conditions have to be sustainable. What all the research evidence tells us is that it takes, as we would expect in a very difficult and complex job, is that it takes many years to become really proficient. I live in a country, England, where 50% of new teachers will have left in their first 5 years in the job. 50% left within 5 years. What the research evidence tells us is that teachers get to be really effective sort of 7 years onwards. All those teachers with all those hopes and those aspirations who never even really got to the point where they'd become the great teachers that they hoped that they would become. And the notion of not just retaining, but developing. And that, in a sense, is the focus of our work. How can we not just retain people in work, but support and develop them to become the great teachers that they want to be? Now, again, I'm reiterating some things that you've already heard from the front of the platform here already this morning, and Martin's trailed his report. Well, let me say something about our report and get in before you publish your report, Martin. But what in terms of developing teachers, because whilst we all agree on those three key issues, whoever we are in this room, we will agree on those three issues. It's Christine's point entirely. The reality of the experience is very different. And in relation to the notion of support and development, which is the focus of this project, we identified two particular issues. So you were telling us in your survey responses about two particular issues. The first is that for many teachers, they're not even able to access decent quality professional development. And it is worth reminding ourselves that since the economic crisis of 2008, public expenditure, general government expenditure, across virtually every country represented in this room, has taken a dramatic cut. Only now, 10 years later, are we slowly seeing the signs of recovery. What research that I have been involved in for ETUCE previously demonstrated is that within that global figure of cuts in public expenditure, actually education has suffered disproportionately badly. So cuts in educational expenditure have often been worse than general cuts in government expenditure. And I think we can probably also speculate, we don't have the data, but I'm pretty confident we could say this and it would be correct, is that within education expenditure, support for professional learning and development has been cut even further. Because of course it's seen, wrongly, but it's seen as somehow non-essential. It's seen as an easy target. So it will have been impacted very badly. The result, the consequence of that, is that for far too many of your members, they are undertaking their professional development at their own expense and/or in their own time. We know that's the case. The professional learning and development in our education systems is hugely subsidised by your members. Actually, even where that professional development is available, there's an issue about the quality and the relevance. And in the survey, what people were frequently telling us was that rather than experience professional development as something positive, something that I feel gives me new skills, teachers experience it as a top-down, managerially driven imposition, which is something that they have to do rather than something that they want to do, and doesn't really address their needs. So a process that should be energising and exciting and that should give teachers new skills, paradoxically and bizarrely, often de-skills. And at its worst, it even infantilises teachers, frankly. And teachers feel as though they have no control over that process. So we've got to remind ourselves this isn't just about access to professional development. It's about shaping the content and the quality and the experience of that professional development. And just to illustrate these points, let me give you a quote, not from this study, but from a piece of work I did a little while ago, and I was talking to a teacher in England. I'll read the quote out to help with the translation. Excuse me. The professional development you are driven to do by your head teacher, particularly if you have a head teacher like mine, is stultifyingly boring. I don't know how easy it is to translate the word stultifying, but it is a beautiful word in the English language, let me just say that. It doesn't give me any new skills at all. It is deadly, it is tedious, it is let's jump through a few more hoops, and if I don't do it right, I'll get hit with a big stick. It's horrible. I wonder what image you have of that teacher. Some people would characterize her perhaps as negative, critical, demoralized, disaffected. These are words that I hear used about teachers who express views like this. Let me tell you what she said next. But I like learning. I enjoy learning. I need that stimulus. This is a teacher who, because of the problems that she identifies, was devoting hours and hours of her own time to organising the professional development of her colleagues. She was tackling that problem that she identifies by taking action herself and organising professional development for her fellow teachers. And she was doing it through her union. For her, the union was the vehicle to address precisely those issues that were such a frustration, because she really wanted so much better, and the system was letting her down. And what this quote reminds me is that unions have always had a key role in addressing the professional needs of teachers. Now, those needs, I think, are becoming more complex in the world in which we live. The challenges are becoming greater, so the need for this work is becoming greater. But education unions have always played a key role in addressing these sorts of issues. What the research report does is identify currently lots of the different ways that your unions are responding to these problems and tackling the issues of inadequate access, but also inadequate quality in terms of support for your members. And what we did in the report was look at what you were telling us about the work you were doing, and we've identified 5 broad strategies. These are 5 different ways of thinking about the work that your unions are involved in. And some of these, look, they work differently in different places, and some unions are doing lots of these things, some of them are doing less. Some are easier to do in some contexts and some are more difficult. We're not offering these as a blueprint or a plan or this is what you must do, but I think as a sort of stimulus to think about what is happening and how unions are addressing the needs of your members, it's a framework to think about. And what I want to do is just very briefly go through these 5 strategies, say something about them, and then you're going to hear, I think, at different points of this programme from people who are actually doing this work, and they can tell you much more in the detail about what that work looks like. The first point, and it is deliberately, I have to say, the first point, is about developing an extended, what we've called developing an extended bargaining agenda and the importance of social dialogue. We know that collective bargaining is central to protecting, defending, extending your members' pay and working conditions. What we saw work very effectively in some of the countries we worked with in this project is the way some unions were able to develop what we've called an extended bargaining agenda, where that collective bargaining wasn't restricted to so-called industrial issues, but extended to include professional issues. And you know, of course, that there really isn't an easy divide between those two things. If I want access to good professional development, I actually need a contract which protects my time to make that professional development happen. So these issues are absolutely integrated. And what we see is unions in this study very effectively, I think, working, what we call it working horizontally in terms of connecting the industrial and the professional, but also working vertically, because this social dialogue isn't something that just takes place at national level, but can take place at national level, local level where that's appropriate, and actually at workplace level. And I think you're going to hear from Susan Quinn shortly from the Educational Institute of Scotland, who I think exemplify very well exactly this sort of approach. The second strategy that we identified, we called educating the educators. It's a recognition that education unions have always, and certainly currently, play a major role in directly providing professional development opportunities to their members in very diverse ways, depending on context, depending on all sorts of issues that are particular to particular countries and particular unions. But there are very many of your organisations involved in directly meeting the professional needs of members by directly providing professional development. And some people question this and say, well, isn't that an employer responsibility? And it absolutely is an employer responsibility. But what I would say about what we came across with this work is that there is something distinctive about union-provided professional development. It provides a space which is different from that which I think tends to be an employer-driven agenda. And it starts from where the teacher is rather than from the needs of the organisation. It's qualitatively different, and I think it performs a very important function. Later this morning, you're going to hear from Rossella Benedetti and from one of the Italian unions talking about how her union is involved in doing exactly this work. The third strategy we identified is called, in the report, facilitating self-organising. What we mean by that is there can be a temptation, I think, with this sort of work to ask yourself, well, what is the union, this thing, the union, what is the union doing for the members? It's a sort of, what is the service that we're providing? And what we saw in some instances in this research was that there are really interesting examples of teachers doing this work for themselves. Teachers are taking their own action to address some of the issues that we're talking about, but they see the union as the vehicle to help them make that happen. And if I can give a very personal example, but back in England, I'm involved with actually members of Christine's union who are setting up a network of reading groups. right? They're frustrated by the sort of material that they are provided with in their work from their employers. They want to read a wider range of ideas. They want to access a wider range of research. They feel that they're being told what to think in their jobs, and they want to think more widely. So they have established their own reading groups, and they're doing it through the union. What I have to say about this particular project is this is entirely young teachers. These are, exclusively, I would say. I don't want to sort of define young teachers in any particular way, but these are people in the first 10, 12 years of their careers at the most, absolutely wanting to do something different and seeing the union as a way to self-organise, which actually is what unions have always been about, worker self-organisation. And we can see it in this area as well. Okay, I need to move on. Strategy 4 we call framing the narrative, and Martin referred to this. It is an echo of the earlier report that we did for Education International. But what I would say is that too often teachers are invited to help identify solutions, but when somebody else has already defined the problem. And if you're trying to address the wrong question, you will not get the right solution. And what we saw in the project and is referenced in the report are lots of examples where there's a sort of campaigning and advocacy work in which education unions are trying to sort of frame the narrative within which these policy solutions are being identified. We have colleagues from Greece here today, and one of the examples in the report is the way the Greek unions used World Teacher Day to raise issues about academic freedom, which they felt were being stifled partly because of the austerity measures that are being experienced in Greece. But this is a professional issue. This is how teachers experience their work. It's about autonomy and control. It's the voice of the union that is helping frame that debate. The final strategy we call building alliances and developing partnerships. This is just lots of creative and innovative examples of how your organisations are working with a wide range of other organisations to, as it were, amplify your ability to meet the professional needs of your members. In an ideal world, that involves working with ministries and employers, and there are lots of examples of that. Unfortunately, in some cases, that's more difficult work to do, but certainly there were examples of that, but not just employers. Universities, research institutes, civil society organisations, lots of creative alliances and partnerships in which the union is central, but as I say, an ability in a sense to mobilise a wider set of resources. And I think you're going to hear later in the morning from colleagues from Romania who I think illustrated this particularly well. Couple of minutes. 2 minutes really just to reiterate the importance of this work. And it may be self-evident to people in this room, but I think it's important to keep touching base about these things. I was a teacher for 15 years. I've worked in universities for 15 years. I want control, autonomy over my work. My union earlier this year supported us defend our pensions. But actually, I want my union to defend more than my pay and my pensions. I want the support and the strength of my union to support me in all the aspects of my work, not just one small part of it. What I know is that I need the union to support me in all aspects of my work. What we said in the Education International report is, I can't really be the teacher that I want to be without the support of the union. But that's not just a tiny, it's an important, but it's a smaller part of my job. It's about the totality of the job. This really ought to be the area where teachers, unions and employers can work together. There is so much to be gained from working with rather than working against. And I think what the report emphasises is that where you can create those alliances between our different organisations, the outcomes are much more likely to be positive. And that feeling of frustration that we saw from the teacher in the slide earlier on, those issues disappear when we work together. And the final benefit is for the union. Because this is work, and we saw this in the research, this is work that connects the union with its membership, often in new and different ways. It often draws members into the union and into activity who might not otherwise ordinarily be much involved in the union. And in drawing members into the organisation, it strengthens the connection between the member and the union. It builds the sense of collective identity, and actually it builds solidarity. This work doesn't undermine the union in the way that just occasionally you hear people suggest it does. It doesn't undermine the union, it strengthens the union. And I think the challenge for yourselves, if I may say, is the same as the challenge for your members, which is how can we better learn from each other about how to do this important work. I hope the report makes a contribution to that. I know that the next day and a half will make a big contribution to that, and I look forward to being part of those discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Howard. I let Howard stray just slightly beyond time because I think this is really absolutely critical. I'm just going to say at this point that one of the publications that my own union produced about the CPD, Continuing Professional Development Programme that we had at the time, said on the front, "It's union business." And we said it's union business because we absolutely believe that CPD is central to the work of the unions. Now, I've had a little note from Agnes telling me that I should remind participants that they need to mute their phones. Fortunately, my hearing is not so acute that I've heard anybody's phone going off, but maybe other people have. So we have now only about 5 minutes for any questions or discussion that people want to bring up in relation to Howard's presentation before we move on to the case studies from colleagues who will join me on the stage in 5 minutes or so. So if you do have a question or an observation for Howard, if you would raise your hand and if you would also say who you are and use your microphone. So if I see any hands raised, I will take them now. Okay, I think that's Christian, yeah? But please say who you are.
Okay.
Merci.
Alors, Christian Chevalier, UNSA Éducation France. Merci beaucoup pour cette présentation. Évidemment, il y a un élément majeur dans ce qui a été dit, c'est la nécessité d'avoir un agenda du dialogue social. C'est absolument indispensable. La réalité, c'est qu'il faut avoir en face de soi des gouvernements, des interlocuteurs qui veulent vraiment négocier. Premier élément, en France par exemple, en ce moment, c'est très difficile de négocier avec le ministère de l'Éducation nationale. Deuxième élément qui me paraît aussi important et qu'il faut souligner, vous l'avez un petit peu dit, c'est qu'il me semble, en tout cas dans notre pays, on considère que l'expertise, ceux qui savent, c'est le ministère de l'Éducation nationale qui ne considère pas que les syndicats sont aussi des experts qui connaissent et maîtrisent aussi les sujets. Et donc là, on est sur un rapport qui est un rapport, au fond, de hiérarchie et non pas sur un rapport de négociation. Et c'est sans doute, me semble-t-il, une des grandes difficultés que nous rencontrons, c'est d'arriver à avoir des interlocuteurs qui considèrent, au fond, d'égal à égal, même si la décision finale revient évidemment à ceux qui ont une légitimité politique. Mais il me semble qu'on a une vraie difficulté en France, mais j'ai l'impression que c'est dans beaucoup d'autres pays la même chose.
Merci, Christian. I'm sure that Howard has some remarks about that, because this will not be only the experience of colleagues in France.
Look, very briefly, and I absolutely accept your point, I identified collective bargaining and social dialogue as priority number one because I think it's really, really important. You know, I didn't have time to develop the argument further, but if I did, I would have pointed out absolutely that in far too many countries, the quality of that social dialogue and the quality of that collective bargaining is completely unacceptable. So there's a major challenge to how you bring about improvement in that area. And I think it's partly about trying to open up new possibilities there, whilst absolutely accepting how difficult that is. But what it also means is that because that voice isn't there, in a sense, in an institutional way, I think we have to work harder to work with our members, to mobilise their collective voice, so that actually those in government cannot ignore what teachers are saying. I don't underestimate how difficult that is. We're all trying to do that all the time. But in the absence of having adequate collective bargaining procedures, that notion of member engagement and member mobilisation, I think, becomes even more important.
Okay, I'm just going to take one more question and then we'll move into our case studies. Colleague here, please say who you are.
I'm Joaquim Santos from the National Federation of Education in Portugal. And my question, Howard, is the following one. Teachers have been under the attack, as we know, in many countries, not only in Europe, but I suppose all over the world. And my question is, do you think we need a new professionalism from the beginning? Do we need a new kind of social dialogue? Or is that enough for us to make some corrections on what we have? Thank you very much.
Very interesting question. Howard.
Thank you for that question. I really appreciate it. And let me be a little bit mischievous and actually put that back to all of you and say maybe that's something to put in the front of our minds during the conversations over the next day and a half. It's a really big question, it's a really important question, it's a really interesting question. I can't begin to answer it now, but I think actually if it's in people's minds in the discussions, it would be really interesting to get different people's perspectives on that. I'm just beginning to sort of process what you're saying. I think I can think of lots of interesting responses. Let's use that to help shape this discussion. I hope that's not a cop-out of an answer, but it is a cop-out of an answer on air. And I think you said that was the last question, didn't you, Christine? I'll catch you later, John.
Thank you very much, Howard. Thanks again for the presentation and the responses to those questions. And I think that we will bear that question in mind as we move forward, because of course colleagues from many different unions, from many different jurisdictions have felt de-skilled, one of the words that Howard used, and have felt that their professionalism has been undermined and under attack. And as Christian said, people not being taken seriously as professionals. And this is clearly a very significant issue for all our unions. I do see another question, but Janka, I'm going to move on to the presentations and we'll take some questions afterwards, okay? So I'm going to invite now to the stage Susan Quinn from EIS, Alexandra Cornea from FSLI in Romania, and Rossella Benedetti from UIL Scola, who all will make 10-minute presentations, and then we will have more time for questions and discussion. Okay, so we're going to take them in that order. Susan will speak first, then Alexandra, and then Rossella. I should just say that as a profession that generally, globally, is about 70% women, it is very nice to see a platform of all women. Susan. Okay, the floor is yours.
Good morning, colleagues. Apologies, I have a bit of a Scottish cold, so apologies to the translators, that might make me even more difficult. The EIS have been actively involved in the work around professional learning in Scotland for many years now, and it was good to hear from Howard around the 5 union strategies in this area, because actually, although he highlighted the first one as being one that I would touch upon, in reflecting on it and reflecting on the work we've been involved in over the last few years, actually we'll probably touch on all of those areas, because we see this as being such a vital part of the work we do. The EIS is the largest teachers' union in Scotland. We cover all sectors, from early years educators to those in the university sector. We support teachers from the student stages through to being in promoted posts across the country. We're in a good situation in Scotland in that generally across education structures, teaching is teaching and initial teacher education and other professional development work is seen as a continuum. It's not something which you do your initial teacher education and then there is no further expectations in this. And this slide just gives you an outline of where we work with others involved in this. The General Teaching Council of Scotland is just over 50 years old now. We have a teacher majority on that council, and whilst it has changed its nature over the past few years, we continue to maintain a teacher majority on that council. Initial teacher education courses are also under development, but we have a key situation around having a 4-year degree programme, some of which are now moving into being 4-year master's courses for teachers, but also postgraduate courses of 1-year length. Whilst some challenges in the last few years around a desire to move to quicker training options similar to Teach First models south of the border, we've managed within Scotland to resist that approach and continue to have what we consider to be high quality initial teacher education. All those involved in who are educated as teachers within Scotland have the opportunity to have a 1-year induction year, which provides them with a guarantee of employment at that stage. And then at this point in time, because of teacher shortages, if they do well within that year, pretty much guarantees them a permanent post elsewhere within the system beyond it. The system is covered by standards for full registration, initial teacher education, career long professional learning, and those standards for senior managers. We have that professional contract, which also has professional learning at the heart of it. So a 35-hour school week where teachers have a maximum class contact time, have personal time, and 5 hours which is collegiate, which is negotiated within each school so that professional learning can be part of what the school is taking forward to develop improvement within that area. But also within that professional contract is a commitment to 35 hours personal professional learning by each teacher, which will be agreed with their line manager at their professional review and development meeting on an annual basis. Excuse me. For the EIS, professional learning is an entitlement to all teachers. It is central to the teacher's identity. It's essential to what we are looking at. It's a crucial part of the teacher professional voice and key to our teacher activism within our trade union. And we actually have made good use in recent years of this as a tool for union organising. So where we might have struggled in the past to get teachers along to what we would call our normal trade union meetings, even if it was about critical issues of pay and conditions of service. Where we get people along is to professional learning opportunities that we put on. And because we're smart, we also make sure we tag on something to do with the work we want them to be involved in. So we're currently involved in a pay campaign. There will be no meeting that the EIS is involved in delivering which will not message our pay campaign within it. We might not get those people along to just a meeting about the pay campaign, but if they're coming to do some professional learning, then they're also going to hear about the pay campaign within that. And it's been a really good organising tool for us in that way. And clearly within that is also about union learning, because we need to make sure that our reps are well supported and that they see this as part of their ongoing professional learning too. So we also will cite work around reps training, whether it be health and safety or leadership events, which also tie into their own professional lives. Our learning reps are central to this. It's a continuous programme for this. We've been recruiting since 2002. I was one of the original learning reps within our system. It has quite a high level of qualification itself attached to it. It's one of our only reps roles which actually has a qualification attached to it in order for you to be accredited as a union learning rep. The union learning rep works in a slightly different way from our branch reps because they are multi-establishment. So they will be within a local authority and they will work across a variety of schools in most circumstances. But the work around the training for that has been crucial in our work with the University of the West of Scotland in developing that as a quality learning opportunity. Excuse me. What they do, we can see here, they are about providing members with information about the learning opportunities that are available. We have support, advice, and we make sure that they advocate on our behalf for highest quality. So they will also be involved locally and nationally in discussions about what's being offered around the work. And they work and advise teachers around professional update and PRD processes. Our own professional learning is key to what we do. We recognise it as being central to teachers' development, and we work very closely with others in this area. We believe that, as everybody has said already, that highly trained, highly committed teachers are what are best for our young people, and that we need to make sure that we play a part within that. And our EIS learning reps have a key role for us in leading that, trailblazers that they might see. In terms of the work we do, you can see here that we have a range of partnerships ongoing with this. We work alongside Scottish Government in developing professional learning, and indeed, most recently we are about to appoint 2 posts, seconded posts to our organisation as a result of the ISTP conference which took place last year around the impact of poverty on education. Scottish Government are funding these posts. EIS will be managing the project, but we also work with other agencies across the country, depending on local areas, but also nationally in terms of qualifications that are on offer, either through universities or wider partners. We had an active role to play. As said, we had a teacher majority in the General Teaching Council. Of that teacher majority, the vast majority of those are EIS members, and the EIS will also be represented on a wide range of steering groups nationally and locally in relation to professional learning. We see this as being our key to our work, and we go back to the very beginning, which is that our standards for the EIS is it's about a promotion of sound learning, and the interests of teachers are at the heart of that.
Thank you very much, Susan. And for those of you who think of the UK as an undifferentiated jurisdiction, you see, I know that what goes on in Scotland is very different, from what goes on in England. And it's a really good example of the union being able to work really well with both local authorities but also with the Scottish Government in order to ensure that teachers are doing the very best job that can be done for the young people in our system. So thank you very much. Very good to hear that. We're going to move straight on to our second case study, and this is from Alexandra Cornea, and she is specifically going to talk about the provision of European funds. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you all our experience about the teacher training system in the region developed by the unions. Our organization is the largest trade union organization in Romania from all sectors. We organize almost 62% from all the employees in education sector at all levels except higher education and research. And also we are the oldest one. We registered our organization right in the first week after the Romanian Revolution finished in 1989. So we are very proud of this. We try to work in the favor of our members, and during the years we obtain better working conditions for our affiliated members. But talking about training, our experience start in 2008, when the situation in education sector in Romania was in a very bad condition. The social dialogue, it was absolutely frozen. We had 2 months of daily protest in the street in December and January, and the winter in Romania is not very funny. It's not south of Spain, precisely. And the salary in that time, the average salary in that time was 154 euros by month. Extremely low. Basically, it was impossible to live with such a salary. Also, in that moment, we demand our government in front of justice court in the process, in a trial, because they refused to pay a salary increasement approved by the parliament of the country. We open 100,000 individual trials for each member of our organization. It was something absolutely crazy, but we did it, and we won in all at all the levels in Romania. And until now, the government until today, the government still pay for those trials. So the situation, it was very complicated then, and we realized that it was impossible to get a salary increase in that moment. In 2009, more than that, the government decided to cut our salaries with 25%, so it was obviously that it's impossible to obtain an increasement of salary. So we must to become creative. We was forced to be creative somehow. And let's say our salvation was the European funds. We use a provision in the National Law of Education who said that the teacher can obtain an increasement of salary with 25% if they prove that they achieve new competencies and new professional skills in their teaching profession during 5 years. That means if they achieve some training courses. So we said, okay, this is the only way that we have. Let's do something with this. And in 2009, we decided to access our first project using European funds. So our philosophy was quite simple. We said to provide trainings for more teachers, we need to create our own training structures, managed and conducted by our union, and for this we also need our own trainers. So we start with the first project. It was a project financed by European Social Fund in Romania, around €2.5 million. It was the budget, and we create our own, let's say, training institute with 8 regional training centers. And at the end of 2018, now, I can tell you that we already train 7,000 teachers who are specialized right now in various topics like quality assurance in education, management of the schools, and other competencies. They receive all certification from the Minister of Education, and some of them receive the Europass certificate issued by the European Commission. Also, in total, from 2008 and until 2018, we access almost 6 million, 5.8 million euros in projects. Here you have the numbers from various projects that we use. The most important is that we realize that we have to use any kind of project, any kind of fund, it's possible. It's available in Romania. So we didn't focus only on European Social Fund. We access also Norway grants. We access also projects financed by former Leonardo da Vinci program. We developed 10 mobilities programs under this framework. In total, almost 400 teachers received trainings in Portugal, Italy, and Spain, and Europass certificates. And also, we use now Erasmus Plus program, who is available also in Romania. We start to deliver, and we are proud of this, to sharing our experience and to deliver at the request of our colleagues trainings in countries like Egypt and Kuwait and Turkey, especially about social dialogue and how we do social dialogue in Europe and about equal opportunities. And here you can see some photos from our trainings. And now we realize that we have to move forward and to focus on other objectives, like representing teacher professional needs in social dialogue. So we need to be more focused on this and to strengthen our capacity, like trade union, to deliver teacher training, because in order to achieve this last goal, we start to develop training centers in each county. Right now we have 20, let's say, county training centers approved by Minister of Education. So we do not stop here, and we try to develop our network of training centers permanently. Another goal that we have, it was to set up a sectoral committee for education and continued training. Why? Because it's a law in Romania who said that every sector, every economic sector in our country should have a kind of committee like this one, who must regulate the occupational standards for the profession. So together with our colleagues from Alma Mater Federation, which organized the higher education sector, we try to set up this committee. It's right now in the last part of the approval by the Justice Court. So we suppose that from the 1st of January 2019 we can start our work. Basically, the occupational standards for everything means education and continuous professional training in Romania. It doesn't matter the sector, should be approved by this committee. So I think we have here a very, very important task to approve professional contents for the trainings and professional contents for the standards. I know I will finish very fast. Here I try to present you a new project that we set up with the Minister of Education. It's focused on developing the teaching profession and the new steps in the career. But what I would like to say now, because I have only few minutes, is that since we try to focus also on teachers who are working with students with special educational needs. This is a very, very big problem right now in Romania, and not only in Romania, in many other countries in Europe. As you know, the teachers do not, except Italy, which is a very good example, the teachers do not receive initial training in the universities on this subject. So they are not prepared to work with those kind of children. Because of this, their motivation and the stress is very high, and they basically refuse to work with them. So all the children, all those kids need equal access to education, so we have to provide this. We have right now a project. But I think maybe it's the moment to launch a new debate inside of our European Trade Union Committee for Education, together with our colleagues from university, to see how we can do to include this important topic in the initial training of teachers in universities. This is a very big problem, and I think we need to do something in this respect, and our colleagues, at least in Romania, know about this, but it's quite difficult to work on this topic. So maybe with the help of the committee, we can do something, at least in my country, if not in other countries. What I like to tell you in the end is that we are not the only one in our region who are focused on training and who realize that the continuous professional trainings of the teachers is very important. We are trying actually to do what the Minister of Education in our region should do. And this is to give more qualification to our affiliated members, to highlight the importance of teachers and teaching profession in our countries, and also to give them the recognition of their work and to give them more motivation, and of course, not in the last, to increase the salary, which in our region still remain quite low. So I wish to highlight here the excellent work that other organizations do in the region. It's an example of our colleagues from SAB Bulgaria. Mrs. Takeva is here, and maybe later she can tell you their experience. They set up a Balkan Institute for training, especially for teachers in the region, and I think it's an amazing, excellent idea, and I hope will work. Also, our colleagues from ZNP Poland are focused on training, and we work together with them and with our colleagues from Serbia to a new project. We receive full support of ETUCE staff on this respect, and we are hoping that next year we can present you our new initiative in order to develop the continuous professional training for teachers in entire region of Central and Eastern Europe. Thank you very much for you listen me, and I can answer the question later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. Important, I think, to raise the issue of special educational needs and disability, which I think in many of our jurisdictions is an under-discussed issue, and it is clearly significant and important as a social justice issue. So thank you for that presentation, and in particular mentioning the kind of cross-national, transnational work that you're able to do in your part of our region. Okay, our final speaker in this session is Rossella Benedetti, and she is going to talk about her union's Trade Union Training Institute. Rossella, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Susan. Susan Christine, thank you for inviting me to illustrate our work in Italy. To be honest, every trade union, big trade union belonging to the European Trade Union Committee for Education does something for continuous professional development, but I try to explain now how it works in our country. As you can see here, we've got the logos of my union and our training and research institute, which is called briefly IRASE. And I want to start talking about social dialogue and teachers' professional needs here in Italy. I want to explain to you some give to you some basic information just to understand and to frame my presentation. Before 1993, teachers were all civil servants, like it happens in other countries, except for those working in vocational and training institutions. Those were employees employed by the regions or by private providers. In 1993, we made a choice. Workers and unions pushed for change because the status of civil servant didn't grant us particular advantages, not about money or working conditions. On the other side, on the other hand, we had problems because we had to always to put pressures on the governments to update our salaries to have increases or to change our working conditions because they were not suitable anymore to the conditions of the education system. So we turned to collective bargaining and that was good for us, for the unions and for the workers. And now teachers, but everyone else working for the state, except for military staff, they have become public employees. And we are responsible for negotiating every 4 years, before now 3 years, the working conditions, including training rights and opportunities. So this is very important because in our collective agreement we have provisions about training, provision about the conditions of training, paid leaves eventually, to facilitate the attendance for teachers, the attendance of such courses. But due to the crisis, as everyone knows, and increasing influence of neoliberalism, in the last 10 years, governments have tried to reduce the scope of collective bargaining. For whom are we bargaining for? I want to give you some data. In Italy, there are 8,700 autonomous schools. Our schools are autonomous. They can manage their money. They can hire replacing teachers or replacing administrative staff. They cannot hire permanent teachers. That's the state that does it. From pre-primary to upper secondary school, these 8,700 schools are scattered over more than 40,000 different buildings. So there are a lot. And we have almost 6,700,000 students attending public schools. Only 6% of the students are attending private schools in Italy. So we do have the vast majority of people working for education are in public schools. We do organize also people in private schools, but we focus on the public service, of course. And in total we have 820,000 teachers in Italy, permanent teachers covering all kinds of positions within schools. So only unions that have a 5% share of representativeness, a mean value between membership and the votes that we have got during professional elections, can negotiate collective agreements. So that's the frame. So we have got many unions, small unions, But only unions that have this 5%, at least 5% share, can negotiate collective agreements. And collective agreements, once they have been signed, they are valid erga omnes. So everyone is subjected to the collective agreement, duties and advantages given by the collective agreement. So that's the frame of our situation. So what's continuous professional development in Italy? What are the challenges that we experience? Of course, I have to give you a bit of a preamble before we go through the challenges. For some years, continuous professional development was mandatory in Italy, and the only way to get an increase in salary. But it doesn't work. Teachers, they had to attend at least 100 hours of CPD in 3 years to get this increase. And this resulted in poor quality training, since the ministry focused only on the length, not on the quality of providers and courses. After some years, we gave up this system, again through collective agreement, and CPD was defined as a right, not a duty anymore in collective agreements. Teachers were entitled paid leave to attend training courses. These are very small paid leave, but at least we have. But last reform law, number 107, 2015, tried to restore this mechanism as a measure to foster quality teaching. And of course, we were against it as unions, because the proposal was meant only to boost the training market, not to boost the quality, and not to meet teachers' needs. Besides that, a fixed amount of training hours each year was going to turn into an additional burden, since it had to be outside working time. Our training is outside working time, not within working time, unless you do it when students are not at school. So you're still obliged to go to school and to have training. Another issue is the cost of training, mostly borne by the teachers themselves. So far, the voucher of 500 euros given each year to all teachers cannot cover CPD courses offered by university, for example, or languages or ICT courses. And public funds assigned to schools for CPD are not enough to provide quality training. For all these reasons, as education unions, we campaigned against this law, besides the fact that salary structure increases have to be set by collective agreements. They try to get into and take out from our collective agreements this part. Content and length of CPD is part of the improvement plan of each school now. It is approved by the Teachers' Council, but teachers still attend training outside the working time. So it's burdensome in some way. So who is going to train the teachers? In Italy, the ministry, universities, private for-profit providers accredited by the ministry, private not-for-profit providers accredited by the ministry, and schools. So they set up a register with this new reform law of accredited training providers, and we had to undergo, our institute had to undergo this accreditation process, and we had to provide evidence of the quality and national coverage of our courses, of course. We are, of course, among the private, not-for-profit providers, so we are not, we do not work for profit. What have we done for teachers' professional needs as a union? We have negotiated with the ministry on these issues standingly. We are always there. We are always pushing for change or for improvement. We have fostered in 1990 the creation of an independent research and training institute called IRASE, a non-profit organization that upholds Will Scuola principles and policy lines and policy stance. And we have supported it in the accreditation process with the ministry. We collaborate continuously with it to spread its training offer among our members. And we exchange views and information with its experts on recent and relevant policy developments. So it's a mutual support that we do. Of course, what is the scope of ERASE activities? It is a research and training institute for all school personnel. That means also for administrative and support staff. Its CPD courses are in line with Scuola principles and open to everyone, but are cheaper or free for Scuola members. That means that people are, in some way, they find it useful to be our members, of course. It is accredited by the Ministry of Education. This means that workers are entitled to short paid educational leave to attend its courses. It can also provide CPD to schools when invited to. We have a lot of agreements with schools to provide them with CPD. In some circumstances, its courses can be awarded credits for public selections. So if you can prove that you have been attending one of our CPD courses, it's useful to get more credits and more points in public selections. It can publish studies and researches, and we do a lot of work on them. It has made agreements with international training and research institutes in order to jointly organize special training events, and it provides e-learning activities via its online Moodle platform. This is our website, and this is our online web platform where that we use for most of our courses. I'm available for further questions, and thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you very much to those three colleagues. I should say that I've had the pleasure of visiting all three of these unions, and you can tell the expertise that there is in curriculum development when you talk to members of these three unions, as I'm sure you can from members of your other organisations here. I'm going to invite Mrs. Takova to ask a question, because she had her hand up in the previous session. Janka, did you have a question? Oh.
Janka.
Did you have a question, Janka?
Спасибо, Кристин. Я хочу поблагодарить за хорошая презентация на преждеговорящей коллега из Великобритании. Хочу поблагодарить на наши коллеги из Шотландии, Румыния и Италия. У меня один вопрос, связанный с социальным диалогом и гражданский диалог. Мы, как профсоюз учителей в Болгарии, очень хорошо работаем по проблеме повышения экспертный состав по социального диалога, партнерства. Но у нас немножко хороший проблем, хороший гражданский диалог, потому что вы знаете, я думаю, что в наших странах из регионов очень много трудностей имеем с родителей. И я думаю, что мы можем обменять опытом, как можно расширить гражданский диалог с другими институции, с гражданскими организациями, с родителей, потому что родители очень много создают проблемы в наших школах и в детских садах. Я думаю, что квалификация учителей очень хорошая в Болгарии, но родителей думают, что наших детей, наших школьников в школе не получают качественное образование. Это очень неудобная ситуация получается, потому что это снижает общественное доверие к учителям и понижение общественный статус и престиж в учительская профессия. Спасибо.
Thank you very much. We have perhaps time for one more quick question before I ask colleagues to respond. If there is anyone else who would like to make an observation or ask a question. Okay, colleague here, please say who you are. Thank you.
Oui, bonjour, Muriel Vigneron du SLFP Enseignement ici en Belgique. J'aurais voulu poser une question. D'abord, je remercie tout le monde pour ces interventions vraiment très très intéressantes. Mais j'aurais voulu poser une question plus précise à Madame Quinn concernant l'année d'accompagnement au début de carrière. En quoi consiste-t-elle vraiment cette année? Est-ce que les enseignants ont encore des rapports avec leur école où ils suivent la formation initiale? Sont-ils déjà dans une école où ils donnent cours? Combien d'heures? Voilà, merci.
Okay, thank you very much. Perhaps I'll start with Rossella, so we do it in reverse order. If you have any observations about working with the wider society or improving social dialogue, and then we'll come to Alexandra and then to Susan at the end for the precise question. Thank you. Need brief answers though. Okay, thank you.
I mean, I don't know precisely how it works in Bulgaria, the scope of social dialogue. But we had really an improvement in social dialogue when we turned to collective agreements. So we gave up the status of civil servant. It was not useful to us. While, on the other side, being responsible for negotiating gave us the possibility, negotiating all aspects of the profession, gave us the possibility to have a greater influence also on aspects like training or other professional needs of our personnel. While we are open to link with the civil society, indeed we have some activities that are also CPD activities for our teachers that involve the presence of civil society. And of course, this is something that is often unexpected by civil society because they perceive us as a closed-in category. And it's useful for us because the exchange of different points of view is always useful.
Thank you. Alex?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to tell you something. We realize that without parents, we cannot achieve too much because in Romania, at least at this moment, unfortunately, and during the last 20 years, the image of teachers, it was and it still is quite bad because of the media, because they search sensational and they are not focused on our true needs. So we realized that we really need the support of the communities and of the parents. Because of this, 2 years ago we set up a federation, a national federation, including the 3 main teachers' union in Romania, but also the National Parents Association and the National Council of Students. Together we are working for set up our main demands in front of the Minister of Education. We go together to present our suggestion to the Minister of Education. So and always we have a previous meeting before a meeting with the Minister of Education on different subject. We have a previous meeting in order to go together with the same point of view. This is an aspect. Another aspect it is this one. In all our projects and until now we developed more than 25. We include as partners parents association, depends of the subject of the project, but we always have in our mind to include as partner one parents association. For instance, in the last project focus on children with special needs, one of our partners is the Association for Children with Dyslexia. They are very creative, they know perfectly what they need, and we can help them and help us in the same time to achieve the common goal, quality education for our children.
Thank you very much, Alex. And finally, Susan.
I'll come across. If I just go to our induction programme, it's run by the General Teaching Council of Scotland in conjunction with the local authorities as employers. Teachers will be given a one-year contract with that local authority based in an individual school. They have a part-time contract in terms of the contract is split into a 0.8 teaching contract, so they have 0.8 of the usual teaching duties of a full-time, fully registered teacher, and 0.2 which is a part of their professional learning. During that 0.2 they will work with mentors within their own establishment and across other schools within their area, alongside a local authority mentor who will take them through a particular training programme which leads them towards achieving the standard for full registration. During that period they are paid on 0.0 of our pay scales, and when they achieve the standard for full registration at the end of the year, they then can apply for permanent jobs. Until a teacher achieves the standard for full registration in Scotland, they can't apply for a permanent job. So if you choose not to go on the induction route but to use what we call our flexible route to achieving the standard, you can only be a supply teacher. You can't apply for a permanent job until you have that time. And really quickly on the civil society work, we try to include and engage with a variety of different groups across Scotland, depending on what the project is and the work that's ongoing. We're fortunate in that at the moment we have a collegiate approach. We may not always agree within these committees or otherwise, but parents and wider society are invited to all sorts of events that the EIS will be involved in, and so we will engage with them at those particular times.
Thank you, colleagues, very much for those responses, and thank you, colleagues here present, for your participation and active listening this morning. I've managed to steal 5 minutes of your coffee break, I'm sorry to say, but I'm sure that you can drink coffee adequately in 10 minutes, so we will be back here at 10 to 11. Thank you very much. So, colleagues, I hope you enjoyed your coffee break, and thank you very much for being back in the room. We move to our second series of speakers, and I'm delighted to be joined on the platform by Ryan Plöscher from the GEWE youth section. That means that he is a teacher, but he's not yet 36. So there you are. So that's why he's from the youth section. We're also joined by Gulavara. Thank you. From Norway, a country I visited very recently and thoroughly enjoyed myself. And we're joined by Christian Chevalier from UNSA, France. So, if I can remind you to make sure that your phones are off and that we are still live streaming. And in case you want to go back and look at this again later this afternoon, those of you who will not be joining us this afternoon, there will be a Facebook live replay of this at 3 p.m. and it will, of course, be available on YouTube. So plenty of opportunity to share your experience with other colleagues. But now we move, without further ado, to our first speaker, who is Ryan, who is going to talk about the preparation of teachers for the profession. The floor is yours, Ryan.
Thanks very much. I've prepared a presentation, and I think the colleague who knows how to operate this machine is not here.
I'm sure Agnes does. Yes. Let me try to present.
Right, as I said, my name, as I was introduced, my name is Ryan Plöscher. I'm the Federal Youth Speaker of the German Education Union, and I teach secondary school in Neukölln, which is a district of Berlin. Today I'd like to talk about, briefly a review of the German school system, because in order to explain how teachers are trained in Germany, you have to talk about how the school system functions. I'd like to summarize my own experience. I completed the beginner phase of teacher training this year, actually. I'd like to address a few recent revisions that have been made to teacher training in Berlin specifically, and also regarding the rather extreme teacher shortage that Berlin faces, as well as the state of, as well as Germany in general, and then asking what improvements could be made, in which ways can unions address our professional development needs, especially as new teachers. As I'm sure you've heard many times before, the German educational system is 16 different systems, each state having its own system, and there being larger and smaller differences between the systems. In Berlin, primary school ends at the end of grade 6. In most German states, it's the end of grade 4. And then there are 3 different kinds of schools. One is the Gymnasium, which is the university track school, grades 7 to 10, and then A-levels. The admission to these schools is extremely exclusive. There are no special education students at Gymnasium, and very few students who come from poor backgrounds. At the secondary school, the emphasis on vocational track training, and it ends at grade 10, and then there's also comprehensive schools that are for all tracks and include A-level university preparation. So, my university training went between 2009 and 2017. I apologize for the formatting issues here. My school uses OpenOffice, and the conversion between that and PowerPoint was not so friendly to my design. There were 3 phases of this at university: a bachelor and master's degree, the preparatory service of 2 years, ending with the second state examination. You might be wondering what the first state examination is. In the city of Berlin, that's the master's degree. In other states, it's something called the first state examination. and then in a beginner period. I completed training before all of these changes that I'm going to mention later were implemented. I studied at the Free University of Berlin, both during my bachelor and my master's degree there. The bachelor's degree is 6 semesters in Germany. You study 2 different subjects. Mine were, for example, English and political science, as well as education science. There's an orientation internship of 6 weeks. You're allowed to switch away from the education track while you're in the bachelor's degree, and the emphasis is on subject knowledge. So in education science, you only do education theory in the broadest sense, and nothing specific to your subjects or to the school that you will be teaching in. In the master, it's 4 semesters. That's 2 semesters, again, 2 subjects plus education science. You spend a semester doing an internship for which you are not paid. The emphasis is on educational theory in the specific subjects, and you can choose between being qualified for the gymnasium or being qualified for the primary school. If you're wondering what happened to the other 2 kinds of schools, if you qualify for gymnasium, you can also teach in the other 2 schools, but they don't make any effort to include pedagogy or didactics specifically targeting those kinds of schools. It has to do with pay rates and various other things, and the general drive in Berlin that there should only be one kind of secondary school, so they've chosen to emphasize the best one. That's a matter of opinion if that's the best kind. Because of the teacher shortage, Berlin has now made a decision that's also possible to switch into education at the master's level if you didn't do education at the bachelor's level, but when I did it, it was not possible. This is also a teacher shortage related issue. In other German states, it's much more rigid. Following this, I did my preparatory service at a comprehensive school. It's a school where I still work. That lasted 24 months, and I taught 8 to 12 45-minute lessons per week. I also had a seminar in didactics and 2 other seminars, each in one of my subjects. I took theoretical exams in didactics and pedagogy, and then there were practical exams at the end of the 2-year period, which consist of a perfect lesson in each subject. The emphasis is on lesson planning and on competency orientation, a very rigid definition of competency orientation, which is defined by the person who leads your seminar. It's not defined statewide or even by district, but really by the person who teaches your subject seminar, because they are the person who will take your examination. So most of this 2-year period is, what does my seminar leader exactly want to hear in terms of competency orientation, very specifically, and nothing else. The standards in training, if you choose to do, if you're in a secondary school, are for the highest level of school, which, as I said, does not, by and large, does not have any special education students, any refugees, or really any students from a non-academic background, which means that if your seminar leader is from one of these schools, they expect a very different kind of performance from you than if you work at a secondary school. I got paid about 1,100 euros a month. That's a little bit complicated there, and it's different from state to state. And the preparatory service in Berlin is quite different now than it used to be, because so many people who did not study education are now entering the preparatory service instead, which is causing them to think about it a little bit more practically rather than emphasizing the perfect lesson so very much. In the beginner period, which I also did at the Fritz-Karsen-Schule, you start in just being a completely regular teacher. So a secondary school teacher in Berlin teaches 26 45-minute lessons per week. In the beginner period, that's no different from anybody else. You immediately get put to use as a homeroom teacher, which means that I'm responsible for attendance, discipline, talking to parents, advising when it comes to centralized testing and which school leaving diploma the students get, because there are 4 different kinds that you can get at the end of year 10, as well as planning field trips. So I'm also a travel advisor. If anyone needs any tips for Barcelona or London, I know everything about those 2 cities now. So what did I have to learn in the beginner period? Well, I had to learn everything I know now about classroom management. I had to learn everything I know now about how to deal with special education students, and I am now a fairly good social worker, because that part of the Berlin city has also been saved away thanks to austerity. I have 6 special education students in my class of 24. The legal limit is 4, but who cares about that kind of thing? My colleague has 8 in her class of 26. But, you know, had I gone to the fancy school where they exclude everyone, then I wouldn't have to have this particular issue, which is why I wasn't trained for it. So it's my own fault. There's no formal program for the beginner period, except that it's officially called a beginner period, and if you really want to, you can meet the Minister of Education. She's happy to shake your hand at the beginning, and nothing else happens after that. So that was it's a 7-year educational phase. Yeah, that's a long time. One advantage is that you're definitely older than your students, so we don't have the situation that 23-year-olds are teaching 18-year-olds. I think it's a good thing that you have more life experience. It's fairly easy to change tracks during the 7-year period. In most German states, teachers are civil servants, which means you're sort of married to the job once you begin it. But if you are uncertain during any point in the 7-year period, it's fairly easy to switch out of it. Thank you. It's also easy to change locations. I could have switched universities between bachelor and master, and also switched German states between the master and the preparatory service. You get paid a lot of money when you start. 50,000 euros is what I got paid. It's different from state to state, of course, and if you're a primary school teacher or a secondary school teacher, and 1,000 other options as well. There are plenty of opportunities for the trade union to get involved. That's how I got into the trade union, and the long training period with little income is obviously a downside. Thank you, conversion software. So disadvantages, there's major differences. Everybody cares only about the best kind of school. They don't include special education very much at all, and it's all about this perfect lesson, which does not reflect any part of my actual job. So they recently shortened the preparatory service. They've lengthened the master's degree so that they can pay primary school teachers the same as secondary school teachers, but that's just Berlin. And because a lot of people are coming into this without master's degree in education, they've changed a lot of the preparatory service to adapt to them, which I think is a good thing. And so, to come to the point of this entire conference, in theory, I was supposed to have a mentor. I didn't have one. I'm now a mentor for an intern and someone in preparatory service, even though I finished preparatory service only 2 years ago. It would be good if the examination had something to do with real life. In most German states, it's not possible to do preparatory service part-time, which would be an advantage because you can be a student part-time. Thinking here especially of most people my age are starting to have children, don't want to work full-time. The trade union can offer a lot of direct training. Time management and classroom management are extremely popular seminars in Berlin, and it's how we win a lot of members because, as the colleague in Italy said, if you offer training and it's free for members, then people join the union. It's a really good service. We do it in Berlin too. Also super popular is how to talk to racists in your classroom and how to talk to racists who are parents of your students. Something else that the trade union is also compensating for is that practitioners of special education teach seminars in special education, because at the university level, for some reason, it's all people who, I guess, imagine what ADHD kids are like and then maybe do some surveys with them, but they usually don't teach them in a class of 26, so it's much better to get practitioners to come in and tell you how to do that under real life conditions. And this is another opportunity to be like, hey, join the union, come to our great seminar, and now we've got our claws in you. Why don't you come striking with us? Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ryan. When I listen to what I now think of as younger rather than young teachers, it always makes me feel that the profession is in good heart, really. So now we move to Norway. Our colleague Gunn Gulavara, a bit better, who is going to talk to us about the use of ICT. Gunn is from UEN Norway. Gunn, the floor is yours. Yeah, that's it. Okay, if you just click, it should go. Okay. Just check that this has been sorted out. Good.
Yes. Yes. No.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to present a Norwegian country case. As Christine just said, I'm talking about teacher competence of using ICT in work and how this could increase learning and make more relevance. First, some words about the Union of Education Norway. We are the largest teacher union in Norway. We organize approximately 90% of all teachers in Norway. And we are the second largest trade union. We have around 180,000 members. These are in early childhood education, in primary, secondary, tertiary, and in higher education. In higher education, they mainly are in teacher education. We also have a student organization in our trade union. I would also like to say some words about the model of labor relation, because it's very important for what the union have achieved. It's a coordination between employers, employees, based on 4 pillars that work together. These are a cooperation at national level between strong unions, centralized employer association, and the state. The second is a cooperation between employers and employee at workspace level, which provide legitimacy, contributes to productivity and low level of conflict. And the examples I'm presenting later on is on workspace levels. The third is co-determination and representation, and the last one is individual labor law that protects workers' rights, at the same time emphasizes workers' obligations to participate in creating sound working environments. Internet is well developed in Norway. We have access to internet everywhere in the country, and the use of internet is relatively cheap. And there are many initiatives also from the state achieving citizens to use digital tools. The ICT is everywhere around us, and the schools and the teachers must look follow the changes in society. The Norwegian policy on ICT is well developed, and a digital competence for all citizens is a key concept in the national commitment. ICT is perhaps one of the most important topics we are dealing with at the moment. And ICT involved challenges that is certainly one of the most damaging we are facing today and in the future. ICT has changed the world as we knew it today, and we yet have only seen the beginning of the changes. We have some policy papers like the 21st century teaching profession and the use of ICT. And it deals with changes in a very balanced way, highlighting the opportunity while at the same time describing the potential dangers we have to avoid. Perhaps the most important message in this paper is that the teaching profession itself must shape the way we use ICT in education. If we don't, others will, and with the risk of ICT being used to cut budgets, to privatize, and to commercialize the education. The best guarantee against this damage is that teachers take the leading role in defining education in a digital society. But that insight poses a great challenge to us as teachers and as trade union. The concrete use of ICT to improve education cannot be dictated by governments or invented by corporations. It has to be shaped by teachers. Our job as teachers union is to coordinate this innovation and to conceive governments to provide a framework that will make further development possible. I will present for you some examples of work done by teachers in primary school and academic staff in teacher education in universities. These projects are all local initiatives. They have all the same goal, is to improve teaching and learning. And the local union clubs has contributed on coordination and negotiations. I have to tell from the start, it's not like this in all schools, and it's not like this in all universities, but this is an example of how locals can work on using ICT. This photo is from the didactic digital workshop at the University of Stavanger at the west coast in Norway. By using new technology like virtual reality glasses, teacher, student and the profession can train and develop on relevant and challenging events in classroom and new teaching methods and new technology. The profession has an important role in designing cases using in this training. Students at the University of Stavanger can for free book a limited time in this room for training. And the profession can also, by making an agreement with the university, use these facilities. The next example is from University of Oslo, where they use a digital practice in teacher education for secondary education teachers. Students are, by using videos from actual situation in schools, analyzing real-life school happenings. They use theoretical perspectives and reflect on the situations in the videos. This is an obligatory activity in this education for secondary education teachers. The students are using their own mobile phone, and most of them have, so it's not an extra equipment. And the other technical equipment are programs free, like free apps from internets. And the last example is from primary school. Present, there are projects all over Norway on how to use tablets to increase learning. For example, in writing lessons, the students share text with each other and thus receive direct feedback from each other and from teachers along the way. Experience show that reading and writing skills increase. For the teachers, it's important that they have experience in how to utilize tablets in classroom. And the most important thing is a thoughtful strategy to achieving this success. Preliminary feedback from these three projects is to use digital tools make children in school more motivated. And teaching students also report that the digital training opportunity make them feel better prepared. The students have reflected on possible classroom happenings before they go into the practice situation. But we still do not have enough research on digital tools and use of digital tools and consequences of digital tools in education in Norway. So this is something we are working on. The use of digital tools, we find that it could make a difference, but we are working on to facilitate this. And we find that the teacher needs more knowledge about skills, knowledge and skills about digital tools. They need to train of using digital tools. They need training facilities and also time for planning. And what's most important is the cooperation with employers and the university colleges to prosecute the success of the profession. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gunn. Those of you who are keeping an eagle eye on your watch will know that our timing has slipped a little. However, we obviously want to afford the full time to Christian to make his presentation on access to continuous professional development to improve the quality of teaching as we see it in France. Christian, the floor is yours.
Mettez vos casques, je vais m'exprimer en français. Alors, la formation professionnelle, peut-être attendre tout le monde. Évidemment, la formation professionnelle continue, c'est-à-dire la formation professionnelle tout au long de la vie, c'est un enjeu extrêmement important pour les enseignants que nous sommes. Et sans doute pour 4 raisons essentielles. La première raison, en tout cas en France, c'est que la formation initiale n'est évidemment pas suffisante, même si pendant les 2 premières années de formation initiale, on alterne la formation théorique, évidemment à l'université, et la formation pratique dans les classes de terrain. Deuxième raison, et ça vient d'être dit à l'instant, le monde évolue, les connaissances se densifient, l'arrivée du numérique impacte aussi le travail des enseignants, la nécessité de travailler avec les universités et la recherche sont aussi aujourd'hui indispensables. Troisième raison, mais que nous connaissons tous sans doute, c'est que les politiques publiques, les gouvernements changent et que les perceptions de l'éducation et les propositions qui sont faites, les évolutions, obligent les enseignants à se remettre en question et à s'adapter aux nouveaux programmes scolaires, voire aux priorités gouvernementales en matière éducative. Et puis, quatrième élément qu'il ne faut pas sous-estimer, c'est que, en tout cas en France, avec la réforme des retraites, la carrière d'un professeur, la carrière complète, elle va durer plus de 40 années, ce qui veut donc dire qu'il y a nécessité au cours de ces 40 années à se recycler et à, évidemment, avoir une formation permanente. Nous le savons tous, le métier d'enseignant n'est pas un métier figé, c'est un métier en perpétuelle évolution, c'est un métier de perpétuel questionnement, évidemment, et c'est pour cela que nous pensons que la formation professionnelle continue doit faire partie intégrante du métier et donc en France doit être entièrement prise en charge par l'État puisque nous sommes dans un dispositif, un système éducatif d'État. Alors quelle est la situation de cette formation professionnelle dans notre pays? Donc comme je viens de le dire, elle est absolument nécessaire. Mais malheureusement en France, elle ne cesse de diminuer au cours de ces dernières années. Pour preuve d'ailleurs, la dernière enquête Thalys, enquête de l'OCDE, montre que cette formation continue professionnelle en France est très inférieure à la moyenne des pays de l'OCDE. Et du reste, y compris un certain nombre d'instances françaises, comme par exemple la Cour des comptes, pointe du doigt la faiblesse de la formation continue des enseignants. Donc, je viens de le dire, une formation continue en France qui baisse en volume, mais qui est aussi critiqué par les organisations syndicales, par nos collègues, sur ses contenus, puisque nous sommes encore très largement dans notre pays sur une vision descendante du système éducatif et des recommandations, des injonctions qui viennent directement du ministère. C'est le cas en ce moment, puisque le ministre a décidé de mettre la priorité à l'école primaire sur le lire, écrire, compter, et donc en ce moment, tout le monde va faire de la formation continue sur le lire, l'écrire, le compter, ce qui est sans doute indispensable, mais qui ne peut pas se limiter évidemment à cela. Donc vous le voyez, on a plutôt une formation qui est une formation de l'offre, plutôt qu'une formation de la demande, qui répondrait à des besoins réels des enseignants. Et on sait que c'est bien à cette demande réelle, pratique des enseignants qu'il faut répondre, et qu'il faut répondre d'ailleurs parfois dans l'urgence, parce que la situation dans l'établissement nécessite un appui, un accompagnement et donc une formation. Et puis, les enseignants le savent, une formation choisie, parce qu'on a envie d'y aller, est beaucoup plus pertinente qu'une formation qui est imposée et qui est souvent, comme le disait Howard tout à l'heure, souvent ennuyeuse de la part des formateurs. Alors, maintenant, comment est-ce que ça marche, la formation professionnelle continue dans notre pays? Pour le moment, la formation professionnelle continue des professeurs, elle est incluse dans le temps de service des enseignants, elle est donc dans le temps scolaire. Cela signifie que lorsque des enseignants sont retenus pour participer à un stage de formation continue, ils sont alors remplacés dans leur classe auprès des élèves par un enseignant dont c'est la fonction. C'est-à-dire que dans notre pays, nous avons des équipes d'enseignants dont la fonction tout au long de l'année est de remplacer semaine après semaine les enseignants qui partent en stage, ce qui est plutôt intéressant, effectivement. Bon. Malheureusement, ce que nous observons, c'est que pour des raisons budgétaires, le nombre de ces enseignants qui viennent remplacer ceux qui partent en formation est en train de diminuer, donc la formation continue, pour des raisons budgétaires, est en train de diminuer. Elle diminue aussi dans sa durée, puisqu'aujourd'hui, le temps moyen de formation continue, le temps d'un stage, c'est entre 2 et 4 jours. Jusqu'au milieu des années 2000, on avait parfois des modules de formation continue qui pouvaient durer 2 à 3 semaines et donc qui permettaient d'avoir un vrai temps de réflexion extrêmement important. Donc vous le voyez, nous vivons une situation qui, depuis maintenant une quinzaine, une vingtaine d'années, se dégrade dans notre pays. Et la tentation pour le ministre ou les ministres successifs de déplacer la formation continue sur le temps de vacances des enseignants est évidemment une tentation forte. Alors, pour essayer de trouver une compensation d'autres éléments, le ministère a déployé depuis 4-5 ans maintenant une plateforme numérique de formation en ligne qui s'appelle Magistère. Et au fond, ce dispositif est un dispositif hybride, puisqu'il contient à la fois des temps de formation à distance, où chaque enseignant d'ailleurs le fait quand il a envie de le faire. Ça peut être un après-midi, s'il est insomniaque, il va le faire à 3 heures du matin, bon, c'est son choix. Et évidemment, il y a aussi une partie en présentiel avec des acteurs de terrain. Nous pensons au niveau de mon syndicat que, évidemment, cet outil numérique, il ne faut pas le rejeter. Je pense qu'il fait partie des outils qu'il faut sans doute développer. Mais évidemment, la formation professionnelle des enseignants ne peut pas se limiter à cela. Ce serait une erreur. Ce serait une erreur parce qu'on considérerait alors que, au fond, le travail de l'enseignant est un acte solitaire. Or, on sait que le travail de l'enseignant ne peut pas être et n'est pas un acte solitaire. Il s'inscrit bien dans le cadre d'un projet dans l'établissement, d'un projet dans l'équipe avec les autres enseignants et donc de collaboration. Et puis, il y a une dimension qui, pour moi, est extrêmement importante dans ces moments de formation continue professionnelle, c'est que ce sont des moments particuliers, des espèces de parenthèses dans le quotidien, dans le travail que nous conduisons chaque jour, et des moments où on peut se poser, peut-être un peu se reposer aussi, mais surtout cela permet de prendre du recul, de partager ces problématiques de métier, ces problématiques professionnelles avec d'autres collègues, et puis avec évidemment les formateurs, les universitaires qui peuvent être là. Et ces moments sont extrêmement nécessaires, nous semble-t-il, au moment où toutes les enquêtes internationales, mais aussi les enquêtes que nous conduisons dans notre pays, montrent que le métier d'enseignant est un métier stressant, voilà, et qu'aujourd'hui la question, par exemple, du burn-out des enseignants est très clairement posée. Donc ces moments de formation professionnelle sont des moments de respiration extrêmement importants. Alors vous le voyez, donc une dégradation des conditions de formation professionnelle, et donc comme toujours quand les choses se dégradent, on essaie de trouver d'autres moyens pour aller se former, et on le voit aujourd'hui, nos collègues se tournent vers d'autres structures pour trouver des réponses à leurs questions professionnelles. Les structures qu'ils rencontrent, il y en a essentiellement 3. Des associations pédagogiques qui sont importantes dans notre pays, les organisations syndicales et maintenant les MOOC au niveau des universités qui peuvent répondre à des questions. Concernant les associations pédagogiques en France, je le disais, elles sont importantes, elles sont organisées par des enseignants bénévoles et des enseignants plutôt innovants dans leur pratique pédagogique et qui sont sur des éléments de recherche. Donc ils organisent évidemment de la formation, mais une formation qui est entièrement à la charge financière des collègues qui veulent y participer, et une formation qui se passe évidemment pendant les temps de vacances le plus clair du temps. Et puis, évidemment, les organisations syndicales organisent aussi des formations qui rencontrent bien sûr un écho positif chez nos collègues, parce que pour le moment, en tout cas, nous avons une réglementation, nous avons un droit syndical qui permet d'organiser ces moments de formation pendant le temps scolaire. Et donc, pendant ce temps-là, l'administration, l'éducation nationale, doit veiller au remplacement des collègues qui viennent aux formations syndicales des organisations syndicales. Autre élément important, c'est évidemment que ces moments de formation professionnelle, de développement professionnel, soient reconnus par l'institution. Bon. Et le ministère de l'Éducation nationale vient de mettre en place un nouveau dispositif d'évaluation des professeurs, dans lequel désormais, à travers un entretien professionnel, les enseignants pourront faire valoir ces éléments de formation qu'ils ont faits, soit dans l'institution, soit à l'extérieur, pour montrer au fond leur capacité à se développer professionnellement et être utile au fond à l'institution. J'en arrive à ma conclusion. Il y a un débat aujourd'hui en France, enfin une vraie question qui est pour nous une question importante, c'est la formation continue des enseignants professionnels doit-elle être obligatoire pour tous les enseignants. Pour mon syndicat, l'UNSA Éducation, nous considérons aujourd'hui que cette formation continue doit être obligatoire, parce que chaque enseignant, tout au long de sa carrière, doit continuer à se former. Et puis, il y a un élément important, c'est qu'à partir du moment où elle est obligatoire, il y a aussi une obligation pour l'État de moyens financiers à mettre à disposition de cette formation obligatoire. Alors, nous avons souvent des discussions avec le ministère, des négociations, et chaque fois qu'on veut rajouter le mot obligatoire, c'est un seul mot, c'est pas compliqué dans la réglementation, mais évidemment, chaque fois, nous avons un veto. C'est pourtant, me semble-t-il, un élément extrêmement important pour les raisons que j'ai évoquées à la fois de formation professionnelle, mais aussi de bien-être des enseignants. Je pense que cette formation continue professionnelle est extrêmement importante. Voilà, et il faut donc que nos gouvernements considèrent que lorsque l'on rend cette formation obligatoire, lorsqu'on la densifie, lorsqu'on la multiplie, c'est un véritable investissement. C'est un investissement pour l'avenir, évidemment pour les professeurs, mais surtout pour améliorer la réussite des élèves. Merci.
Colleagues, thank you very much for those presentations. I have let the time slip a little. If we have one burning question, I'm very happy to take that. Okay. I'm sure that this is no reflection on the quality of these presentations, and perhaps over lunch there may be an opportunity to speak. Michel, please say who you are.
Bonjour, Michel Olivier du SNU-IPP France. Merci pour ces 3 présentations très diverses mais qui nous donnent beaucoup d'indications. Je voudrais poser une question à la collègue de Norvège. Vous êtes passé très rapidement sur l'aspect juridique de ces moyens numériques, de ce qui se fait par Internet, etc. Et je voudrais savoir si vous travaillez en particulier sur la question des fichiers. Parce que chez nous, régulièrement, nous avons des problèmes parce que l'État ou les municipalités créent de nouveaux fichiers d'élèves. Et donc, est-ce que ces fichiers peuvent être partagés? Quel est le secret qui protège ces fichiers? C'est pour nous une vraie interrogation et on pense que ça peut être dangereux. Donc, est-ce que vous aussi, quand vous parlez d'aspect juridique, c'est là-dessus que vous intervenez?
Merci bien, Michel. We will confine ourselves to that question because clearly the question of privacy and how students' personal details or presentations are dealt with is a significant issue. Quinn.
Thank you. It's a very good question, and this has been discussed a lot in Norway. From this example, especially the example from the University of Oslo, where the students have an obligatory part of the study program to analyze videos from classroom. The students are using their own mobile phone to make the video films, but they do not have access to this without in limited periods, just when they are analyzing it. So they do not have access to the video all the time. And it's a legal aspect here, yes. And there are made systems around it, and of course all the parents have been contacted and have agreed on making a film of the classroom, because of course all the teachers. So this is not an open, I cannot go and ask University of Oslo, can I watch your video films? It's not open. It's just for didactical use in the education program.
Okay, that's clearly that is clearly a significant issue, and we may ask colleagues from UAN to write us something about how that's actually managed in terms of deleting material and gaining access, and for that matter, asking for permission. So once again, thank you to all our presenters from this session. And our colleagues will now be replaced by our final 3 speakers for this morning. Agnes is doing a fine job in making sure the right names are up here all the time. So I invite our final 3 speakers to join us. How do you say your surname? Babrowskina. Babrowskina. Okay, Babrowskina. Okay. We've met before. Hi. Hi. Okay, so I will introduce our speakers in order of presentation, but say something more about them when they actually speak. So first of all, we have Michael Tudge, who will speak to us. He's from the European Commission, from the Schools Unit and Multilingualism Unit. In fact, he's the head of that under the DG EAC. We have Tatiana Babraskina. It's not bad pronunciation, really. Okay. Whom I'll introduce second, and Kurt Nicola, whom I will introduce in third place. So, Michael, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Christina, and good morning, and thanks a lot for the invitation to this event and actually for organizing the event. I'm really pleased to be here, because if you want to say if teaching is the real lifeblood of an education institution, so is sort of good professional preparation and continuous professional development. And that's really a fundamental discussion we have. And of course, because of that also, teaching is at the heart of the main political initiative that we are pursuing at the moment, which is the promotion and creation of a European education area. And that's what I'm going to focus about in my presentation, my introduction briefly, and the discussion, if you want, to see to what extent or what the role is of teaching and teachers' professional development in pushing and in the creation of this vision of an education area, of a European education area. And of course, also thanks a lot for organizing this event and also the study, because I think it's really fundamental to look at the role that trade unions have in pushing for professional development. We know that you have these both roles of, on the one hand, negotiating working conditions, but to really make sure that teachers grow in joy in their professions. And I know most of them, they're really proud of their professions. Luckily, one of the professions where you find many people who are really so much dedicated to this job. So I think it's really important to also discuss together how that can be maintained and can be further developed, because of course the demands are also enormous. There's lots of developments going on in our societies. There's lots of developments in education system as such. There's always, whenever something happens, we get requests in the Commission, can you do something in the school area to prepare people for all sorts of things? And I think you have the same issues. So I think really to have a mediator in terms of professional organizations and the trade unions to see how can we use all the potential that's there and how can we discuss together in order to develop the profession further. I think that's really so important. This European education area that I want to talk about, what is it? Just for those of you who haven't seen the documents, I just want to recall that it basically has three main elements that to be developed. And the first one, which is central in an EU initiative in that area, is of course to develop the mobility within Europe. We want to have an area because we want learners and staff to move freely around in this area. Our idea is really that school pupils, apprentices, higher education students, they have the possibilities to move freely around in Europe for their learning purposes, for their professional development, because we think it is good for education, for the quality of the education that is provided, it is good for their personal development, and finally it is also in the state where the European Union is fundamental for getting to know each other and to develop in the Europe we want, which is a Europe based on tolerance, mutual understanding and solidarity. So I think that will not happen if we don't have the contacts. Unfortunately, life is not perfect, so if we push for mobility, we still have many obstacles that we have to address, and so that's the second work area for pushing the European education area, to really look after the obstacles and try to mitigate and to reduce them. What's really important for me, however, is that, if we speak of a European space, it's a bit like the single market. We just don't want just a single market for people around. We wouldn't be the European Union if we wouldn't say there has to be equality in this space that we are developing. And this is why we got actually a mandate from the European Council to say, if we talk about a space, a European education area, this is something which should be innovative, inclusive, and lifelong learning based. It's rather general, but they specifically ask us to think about what can be done, what type of policy cooperation would be possible in order to promote an inclusive, lifelong learning based and innovation driven area. So if you want, with the idea also a promise that wherever you are in the European Union, if I sometimes exaggerate, if you are here, let's say in the center of Copenhagen, or if you are in a rural area of, say, Romania, I mean, it will never be the same, but I mean, there should be at least a promise that in Europe we support each other, so that also those areas within the European Union who have challenges, they are supported by all the others in order to develop and to develop a quality education across the board. And I mean, if this is the vision, the European education area with the three elements of mobility, removing obstacles, and promoting quality, inclusive, lifelong learning-based systems, we have, of course, also come forward the last few months with some specific initiatives. So I start with the mobility component, where the most important, of course, is that we came up just with the ambitious proposal to develop further the Erasmus program that we currently have, which is really the flagship program. It's a flagship program in the education area, but it's actually a flagship program for the Union as a whole, to the extent that, I don't know if some of you have seen Jean-Claude Juncker's speech in the European Parliament last week on the State of the Union, where he really used Erasmus as an argument to say, listen, member states, parliament, you have to improve the next financial framework, otherwise we will not have any scholarships for pupils to move around. So you can see how the standing of this program is. And it's, of course, a program which is not just for the students or the pupils. I mean, you have a very, very strong components for staff to be moving. I mean, the Erasmus program allows teacher mobility. It allows teacher assignments. It allows job shadowing for a shorter period, and it allows participation in training events somewhere else. And I'm, of course, with this background, I'm very happy that in the Commission, at least, we succeeded to convince our colleagues, including political leaders, to come up with a very ambitious proposal. And the school sector, which promotes also mobility of staff, will be very strongly strengthened if the Commission proposal gets through the negotiations in the Council and the Parliament. I mean, we are more than doubling the budget for this area. So this is sort of the mobility part. What do we do on the obstacles? The most important part is, of course, to look at recognition issues. I mean, recognition of qualifications and language learning, which is still, unfortunately, something where we sometimes discuss, is the glass half full or half empty? But I mean, there's, in any case, a lot needs to be done. We have come forward with proposals for recommendations by the Council to promote recognition of qualifications in Europe and of also study periods abroad, so that a higher education student, but also a school pupil which goes for a certain time to a country comes back, so that this is recognized very easily. And we have come with another recommendation promoting language learning. Of course, none of this will work if the teachers are not involved. I mean, if a pupil presents a project, I want to go abroad, I mean, who is the one who's going to discuss it with the pupil, whether this makes sense, or how this will be treated when the pupil comes back? So I think it's really important to also develop tools which provide the right guidance and support also to teachers to act in this situation in order to make it possible, so that this learning period abroad for a pupil is the most rewarding and gets very easily transposed when the people come back. It's a lot about trust, so I think we really have to work here on quality issues and involve teachers. The same for language learning. I mean, no good quality language learning if the language teachers are not involved in looking at teaching methods. Actually, also the subject teachers. I mean, the mathematics teachers nowadays has to be involved in language teaching as well as the language teacher. And that requires quite a lot of discussion with colleagues to see how this can actually be done, because it's not trivial. So I think there again a big emphasis that we've put in our recommendation also on the training and further professional development of teachers. Third element I mentioned beforehand, the supporting inclusive lifelong learning, innovation-driven system. This is still a bit vague, it's still being discussed, but we come forward with a number of proposals. One is about that we have proposed a quality framework for early childhood education and care, and that's of course a big issue in many member states. There has been an expansion in the provision of early childhood education in many countries, but many countries are now really faced with big challenges in providing qualified staff for early childhood education. And I mean, and some countries, I mean, that's one challenge. Some countries have provided provision, but they don't actually achieve what the policy objective is. I mean, you have, as we are speaking here in Belgium, it's an interesting system because, I mean, they have very nice and big provision of early childhood education and care, but they still have an education system which is really bad in terms of correcting for socioeconomic disadvantage. So there's something wrong here, so which has to be looked in. Put it like this. So. Also their professionalization of early childhood education staff, a key issue in our recommendation, and I could say the same about anything we've done in the last, also in earlier this year. We have had two packages actually this year. In May we came forward with recommendations on recognition, language learning, and early childhood. We had some other things in April which were about, in January, on key competences, values, inclusive education, and digitization. Again and again, work with teachers, look at what can be provided so that this can be put in place. To close, because I see that Christine's getting nervous. So, what is the, I mean, I just wanted to see that we have for years had a work area to look at making the teaching career an attractive one. I've just been this summer to a conference in Sweden there of the teacher training institutions, and there the other thing we see at the moment, there's real big issues because of new things developing, but also of real big problems in actually recruiting and finding enough people who are interested in this profession. So there are real big challenges for demography, but also making the profession attractive. So there's really so important to look at making this profession something interesting and something people are happy to apply, and actually to keep them happy during the career with all the things that are happening. So I think it's this is the reason why we work on the teacher professional development in the particular working group we have. We have a working group on schools where we have one work strength which is on quality assurance, and now on teacher professional development, on careers going on also for the next 2 years. My colleague Thomas Britzko, who is animating this, is actually here in the room, and we're very happy to work also with ETUCE. You are part of that group, but I can really only invite you to really take an active role in this discussion, and so that we are able not just to speak about teachers, but we actually develop the policies together with teachers in order to make this a highly performing profession, or not to make it. It is a highly performing profession, but to make sure that this highly performing profession develops further, given all the pressures that we have. And I'm really very happy to see that we also get this move from teacher unions. If I may put a little hint to you, so that we make the next step, not just to make sure that the teacher unions are involved, they should be involved, that we also make the next step to actually discuss substance and to look at what are the key issues that your members want to see discussed, and we take that up. Looking very much forward to discussion.
Thank you very much. I move us straight on to our second speaker, well known to many of us in the room, Tatiana Barbroskina. She comes to us today representing the European Economic Social Committee, of which she is a member in the Workers' Group, Group 3. Tatiana.
Thank you. And I'm making connections. I still represent my Lithuanian Education Trade Union, and I'm a member of the ESC. And moreover, I'm the rapporteur for opinion on the European education area, on the mainly focusing on the second package of the initiatives, and also on the Erasmus+. So it's a great opportunity here to also to present some views which are there in the opinion. And many of you, of course, know what is European Economic and Social Committee. And for the others, I can just simply say that this is like tripartite council you have at national level, but instead of the governments, we have civil society organizations. So it's employers, unions, and civil society organizations. So I was trusted to lead these opinions, and it's quite interesting. Actually, probably that was very interesting introduction by you, but what is interesting, it was the social dimension of the initiatives. It happened in November 17 in 2017 during the social summit, when the European Commission introduced the initiatives, when the European education area was presented as such. And then member states, of course, agreed that under this social dimension, education plays essential role. And I would say not even education, but learning, because we have to also bear in mind that we speak about non-formal and informal learning, which is taking more and more place in people's life. So just shortly, because we focused on these 3 initiatives, I would say this is both-way traffic. On the one hand, you have this European education area, which is kind of trying, I don't know just how to say, to balance the system, the education systems, to build the trust between the systems. Because if you already mentioned one of the initiatives on the education area, which is recognition of qualification, recognition of secondary education certificates. I mean, I don't know how many universities in Western Europe would trust secondary education certificates from Lithuania, Romania, etc. Just they take and say, okay, we trust this certificate and you are the student of our university without any exams and etc. I think it's not the case now, and linking it to professionalization, to linking it to other parts of the initiatives under this education area, probably the right thing is to start from early childhood education. And the initiative itself is very ambitious. It's like to make it inclusive, to make it quality, early childhood education and care. But the main responsibility here, again, is on the professionals who are working here. And, of course, on the quality of their initial education and quality of their continuing professional development, which is not always the case. And in our opinion, we also speak about supporting a working environment, which is necessary. We also speak about gender equality in this sector. You know that according to OECD study of 2015, the sector of pre-primary is dominated by women. It's 97%. So we don't have this man model there, and it's also very important. It's also about improving the quality and improving, the balancing the society. So how to make this sector attractive also for all young people, for men and girls and boys. And then we speak about challenges. Inclusive means we speak not only about minority, which actually is traditionally in our country. We speak about increasing number of migrants coming to the countries where they were not before. Like in my country, teachers were not prepared to work with migrant children, and neither in early childhood education or secondary education, and even maybe university level more they were more prepared for that. So again, it's about language learning, one of the initiatives. Language learning, of course, we welcome this initiative, but what is the competence of teachers in terms of speaking languages? If we speak about trusting each other's system, maybe we also have to think about how teachers can communicate with each other, how they can use open education resources. If they're mainly developed in English, in the languages which are, even Polish, for example, they are more developed, but with the Baltic states, 3, 2, and 1.5 million population, to develop such a resources, it's costly, it's not really happening, even we are very digital, but in terms of languages, we are lagging behind many other countries. Then, as I already said, that this trust between the system, trust between countries, it's very difficult to build, but it's possible, and there are the first steps on the education area. They're already made, and this report of ETUCE is coming very timely, because the red line in these all initiatives is professionals who are working there. Their support to them, their development and their working environment, and there are many things which are dealing, the unions are dealing with. And someone also to reflect on what was said already. I think that, yes, Thales indeed is showing clearly how big participation of, how active teachers are participation is in continuous professional development. But active participation doesn't mean the quality, and this is also in the report. So what if in Lithuania the number of teachers and the number of hours the teachers participate in CPD is much higher than in France, but the quality is not there. So it's actually a waste of time and waste of money, and we have to also to improve this. And maybe the report should look further to different sectors, private and public. In decentralized systems, as like we have now in Lithuania, when schools decide what services, what training to buy for the teachers, private schools are more advanced because they have more money, they have more funding to have good trainers for teachers, and public schools are disadvantaged in sense of that they are just grabbing what is available for the money they have. So it's again about funding, and it's about how demanding teachers are. So I have 2 minutes, and finishing, just shortly saying, because now everyone already heard this European education area, or I would say European learning area, because with the recognition of certificates, qualification, diplomas, it's a recognition of non-formal and informal learning as well coming. And from 2018, it is in place in all member states, of course, with a different level of development. But one thing was forgotten. The staff, education staff, was not prepared to that. Now, any VET institution has to provide validation of non-formal and informal learning. But the professionals who are working there, they don't have extra training to provide such services, and they feel lost. Like, again, when we speak about CPD, it's not traditional CPD. The CPD should go step by step with the new initiatives or with the new developments. It's not like you fix for the next 5 years or 10 years and you continue the same. It should be more flexible, more dynamic. Otherwise, we're really putting teachers in the position when they're simply feeling that they're not competent, and they feel maybe they are not in the right place, and it's also not building their self-confidence. And this is not what we want them to translate to their students. The example was very good by professors. He's saying that the teacher who is a loser, it's the system who puts teacher in such conditions that he feels or she feels herself or himself the loser. So, and this is basically what I wanted to say, and I advise you to read the opinion of the ESC. It will be approved by adopted by the SOC section later this month, and the plenary in October. So you read this opinion and others, and they really are very helpful also in your policy work when you are working with the have the social dialogue, which is the key word. I haven't mentioned it, but now I mention. The other red line is social dialogue. Without social dialogue, nothing will move. Teachers will continue to complain, policymakers will continue to push some initiative, and reporting to the Commission that everything is done, and again, everything would be working as it is working now. So, thank you.
Okay.
Actually.
Tatiana, thank you very much. We look forward to reading that report after its passage through the plenary session in October. And I now introduce our third speaker, Kurt Nicola, who comes to us from Austria. And I think the most interesting thing to say about Kurt is that he was a teacher of mathematics and music, and clearly is also a very good linguist. So there you are. We look forward to welcoming him back into the profession at some point, I think. Thank you very much, Kurt.
Thank you very much for the introduction, but I will not sing today. Thank you for the opportunity to talk on behalf of the Austrian presidency here. With regard to the time, I will make it shortly and compressed. Austrian teacher education is structured due to the Bologna principles. As we heard already in the presentation of the country cases today, we also have established for primary, secondary, general and vocational education special initial teacher education entrance tests and a system of bachelor and master studies, as you can see on the screen. With the entrance into profession, the young teachers are obligatorily provided by mentoring during an induction year. And then they are provided by compulsory further education courses and special trainings for advancement. In example, mentors or school leaders must attend 60 to 90 European credits before they can apply for such a function. And I'm sure that the obligatory model is a great importance to ensure quality in education. We can see clearly 4 areas for improvement in Austria, but obviously also in other European countries. Firstly, it is a prerequisite for successful quality development to understand teaching careers as professional continuum and, as pointed out in the project outcomes of the education trade unions, teachers' careers and professional development must be supported efficiently on all system levels. Secondly, CPD must be understood as an instrument for staff development and school quality improvement on the federal, regional, and the school level. Thirdly, the Austrian government is just now establishing the digital skills education and the corresponding digital education master plan, which contains of teaching and learning content, ITE and CPD infrastructure, for instance, internet-based courses, and modern school administration. This is going to keep our whole education system busy for the next years, I'm sure. And at last, an important legal task for ITE and CPT institutions in Austria is the development support of schools in the fields of teaching quality, personnel development, and governance. In coherence with the current education reform, we are in need of high quantities to support a successful implementation process in more than 6,000 schools, and we are working on this very hard. The European education area, to our opinion, should focus on a common understanding of quality criteria for ITE and CPT on the basis of existing outcomes of different working groups, for instance, the ET 2020, like Michael Teutsch mentioned in his presentation. We have an increasing need of personalized learning and personalized learning environments and flexible and individualized learning pathways. Second, we must qualify teachers and school leaders for school autonomy and the efficient allocation and use of resources to realize individual models of support due to the structure and environment of each school. And thirdly, we must develop an attitude of interprofessional cooperation, on the one hand, between teachers, school leaders, psychologists, social workers, school inspection, and institutions for ITE and CPT, and this on all system levels, but also between school administration, social partners, and local authorities, NGOs, and companies. And the European education area must also stimulate the mobility of teacher students, teachers, and school leaders so that they get a broad impression about inclusive systems with high-level outcomes, about modern didactic and governance approaches, and effective quality development systems. In this context, I want to mention the Austrian Master Plan for the development of university colleges for teacher education that is focusing on the strengthening of the institutions in the Austrian and European higher education area, in coherence with the needs of the profession, both quality and quantities, and in cooperation between the institutions in teaching, in research, development support, but also in administration and with joint structures of governance. This process has been starting just now, and we can report about it, of course, in the future. We are integrating the questions of teachers' professional needs, teachers' education and support in the conferences of the Austrian presidency. The VET conference has already taken place in July and dealt with impact trends and developments in vocational education and training in Europe with the Horizon 2030. The expert conference on higher education is taking place these days and deals with flexible learning environments and mobility of students. And the December conference on the implementation of education reforms in Europe deals with the question how positive effects of change processes can be maximized, taking into account the complexity of education systems and addressing autonomy and responsibility of all system levels and all stakeholders. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Kurt. And now we're actually pretty much back on time. So if we have any questions or observations from participants, we'd be very pleased to take them now. Rossella, please. We know who you are, but please say anyway.
It's okay? Okay. Thank you. Just one comment. I come from Italy. I do represent one of the three biggest confederation and union, sectoral union in the education sector. Having been in this activity for a long time now, and having had a lot of contacts with the institution, with the European institution and the ministry at home, there is I think there is a big problem in all this. We all want to do something good. We do want to cooperate, but in the end, the problem is that what we are doing at national level and what we are doing at European level never interact. That's a big problem. So we were just wondering, for example, with my colleague and Deputy General Secretary of my union, if ever our ministry will be at the conferences, which are very interesting, and if ever they will give us some information about that, and if we ever will discuss about the education, European education area, which is not being discussed in our country now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Have we got a second question anywhere or observation? Yep. Colleague here, please say who you are.
Good afternoon. My name is Andre Todd from the Lifelong Learning Platform, European Civil Society for Education. Thank you for these very interesting presentations. I just wanted to come back to this very interesting point about interprofessional cooperation, because I think when we're talking about the European education area, this collaboration with actors outside the formal education system is very important. And I refer to the Council recommendations on key competences for lifelong learning, and there we really see this call for building bridges between formal, non-formal, and informal learning environments. But when it comes to these key competences, I think coming back to the main topic of the discussion, this initial teacher training and continuous professional development is really crucial, because how can we expect learners of any age to develop all these key competences if the teachers themselves do not have the training and the provisions for lifelong learning to develop the competences themselves and then to facilitate their acquisition among learners. So I think in building this whole European education area, when it comes to this, which Michael mentioned, this innovation-driven, lifelong learning-based nature of education systems, we really have to look into how to build those collaborations. And also, we have to be careful and do it in a very strategic way, because teachers have so many demands and expectations. When you ask them to collaborate more with other actors, and it can be seen maybe as another demand, but actually I think it could be a very interesting way to support and enrich the continuous professional development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Okay, so I think we'll ask colleagues up here if they have any observations on either of those two questions. One about the whole question about national European interaction, discussion, and what actually does filter down. In this case, through unions to teachers. And you're quite right, Rossella, we do all want to do something good. What something good looks like, we don't necessarily all agree about, I think. And the second question, obviously, again, about interprofessional cooperation and how we build collaborations and how this is not seen, we don't want it to be seen as a bolt-on. We want it to be seen as integral to the work of teachers and their unions and therefore their presentation in the classroom. So, Kurt, do you have any observations on those issues?
Well, in general, I think the one approach is that the interprofessional cooperation is very important on the level of the school to deal with certain problems of education, of didactic, and so on and so on. But it has also a systemic approach, because also on the system levels we need this cooperation to deal with the challenges of the education system. And if my experience is that the different professions are profiling from each other, and that the cooperation is not always easy to establish. But to my opinion, I'm very, very sure that there is no other way than a good institutional cooperation between the different professions, although it's sometimes difficult because the political structure, for instance, in Austria is very diverse, and the different levels can only cooperate like a platform. But it is very important because in regions where they established such systems of cooperation, you can see clearly that many challenges are very good dealt with. In if you compare it to other regions where such cooperations do not exist.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just would add on the same that it's very much about traditions and culture in particular system in the country. And I've seen that perfect collaboration in Finland, and unfortunately I haven't seen that in Lithuania. I think Erasmus Plus is a great opportunity to learn many things from others, and with the doubled budget, and ESC requested and the Parliament requested even to triple the budget, that maybe many teachers would have great opportunities. Also, again, we pointed that in our opinion, that who will replace them when they will be there, but it's another issue. And coming back what Rossella said, yes, that's true. But we have to bear in mind that education is primary national responsibility. And the Commission and the European level plays complementary role. This is in the treaty. This is 151, I think, article of the treaty that, okay, almost, very close. And implementation is always at national level and even regional level, yes, in your country. It's very complex, it takes time, and you will maybe never hear about implementing European education area, but definitely you will feel this Erasmus, language impact, recognition of certificates, etc., etc. So there will be kind of elements, and sometimes you don't see the whole picture because it's very fragmented. But developments are coming to many countries, and very much depends on national authorities, on national policies.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to reinforce the last point, I mean, it not only depends, I mean, they decide, and they decide whatever they want to decide, and then according to the national political processes. But the whole EU education policy is basically an offer. It's an offer to countries to say, listen, here there is something interesting. That's actually what the education ministers have done. When sitting together, they have realized, hey, we are all working on digital learning. We are all fighting against early school leaving. We are all discussing key competences. And then they decided, okay, if we are all doing this, we still decide at home, but we find it useful to work together in order to learn from each other. And that's what we're doing here. And as I don't like working for the bin, I really like also it's really important to get the continuous feedback to say, okay, what is the topics which have an interest, and what type of support is helpful in order to support national policy making. And we do it with Erasmus, we do it with exchanges. We actually have a fantastic platform which is called the School Education Gateway. If you look at it, I mean, where we actually have a teacher academy on the School Education Gateway. We can have material where you can see tutorials, videos, and all material which shows how the policy initiatives that we have can be implemented, for example, in the classroom. I mean, if we talk about key competence, what does that mean for assessment, for teacher training, and so on. So we have this. So I think it's something really useful, and we really depend on you also. I mean, which is the colleague here from Italy said, okay, is Italy participating? Yes, of course they are. Sometimes they are taking an active role, sometimes less, but I think it's really also the role of ETUCE to promote towards your national organizations what's going on here, and that you tell us in our national organization these are the pressing issues, and it would be good to help it, and we're happy to do it, and then to see how we do it. We have the Teacher Education Gateway, the School Education Gateway, including the Teacher Academy. We have issues, we have ideas for peer learning, we have peer learning events focused on specific member states. We've done it twice, I think, already also in Lithuania, where when it came on teacher careers, we were together with the Lithuanian authorities, we have invited colleagues from other countries who then came to Lithuania to discuss what they've done. So a colleague from Scotland, from the Netherlands, from Italy, were going to Lithuania and saying, that's what we've done. And then Lithuania do what they want to do. But they've at least listened to what the others were offering. And it's really hopefully it's something that will improve policy making, because I mean Italy, for example, is a case that I'm really very much saddened to see what happened there when there was a big initiative sort of a few years ago, which had big enthusiasm on the political side, and also big discussions with trade unions on reforming schools, and in a way government and the different actors never came together, and the whole thing crashed at the end of the day, which is a big pity because there was so much energy and lots of goodwill, as you said, to do something, but it hasn't really led to a bigger reform, and that's sort of a big pity. We have that in a couple of other countries going on. I mean, like here in Belgium, there's this pact where there's lots of discussion how it should be implemented, and our role is really to help where we can, and please tell us so because we want to be useful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So thanks once again to all of the presenters in this session. I think without a doubt we've brought our capacity for critical thinking and attempting problem solving to bear so far in this hearing this morning. So my colleagues will now leave the stage, and I invite Susan Flocken, the European Director, the Director of ETUCE, to join us, and Daniel Wisniewski, who is the General Secretary of EFI, which is the overarching education employers body, to come and give us a few words about the role of European education social partners in enhancing the professional profile of teachers, trainers and school leaders. And you see here on the platform that we have representatives of the employers and the unions sitting together, and I feel sure that they will be able to say a lot about the positive things that we are managing to do together. But of course, as ever, as Rossella raised the issue, it's also about what we're also doing in our individual jurisdictions, as well as what we're doing at European level. So, first of all, I ask Susan or Daniel? There you are. They always decide between themselves.
Maybe I go and you can... Yes.
Okay. So we'll invite Daniel to make his contribution first. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to actually listen and to see the output and the outcome of your project for last, how many years did you do that? Two years, on the needs of the professional needs of the teachers. It was a great pleasure to have this opportunity to listen to all your feedback, and I would like to summarize it a little bit and give the perspective of the employers' organization as well. Obviously, I think that in the European sectoral social dialogue we have been doing quite a lot of work on this, and I am very happy to see that in the report that Howard Stevenson has prepared. You have mentioned the importance of the social dialogue in this process, and he defined this problem as attracting the new people, attracting teachers, retain them and develop them, as well as to make sure that the attractiveness of this career would bring some new people to this profession. And so the good news about all this is that this is an issue that really the employer side is very concerned about, because obviously, and I think that together with the trade unions we share the same concerns about how can we attract the right people to the profession, how can we make sure that the investment we have been making in them in order to prepare them for this profession over the certain period of time, and the experience that they have gained over the certain period of time within the profession is not being lost later on because they decide to leave to a different one. And finally, how can we make sure that the teachers that, as you have been saying today many times, that are key actors in education, can continue to develop their skills and their competencies in order to make sure that our education is of quality and is up to date. And I think that the only difference that we see between the employer side and the trade unions is that we often very much focus in the employer side on the scarcity of resources that we have, and often we have to, that often are not even decided by the employers' organizations, but rather a different ministry or government. And that's why our focus, and I think we have been already working on this with ETUCE, we did a project on investment in education that many of you have participated in. We had a closing conference, I think, 2017. And I really liked one of the comments that one of the speakers have made, that it is very important to focus on the output of it, not necessarily on the fact that obviously there are cuts in education, and this is something that we should be worried about. But we need to also think, how can we use the resources we have in order to achieve the outputs that we would like to achieve, to make sure that all these elements that are important in education are actually provided, that all the pupils that go to school receive education they need in order to succeed, not only in personal but professional life. And one thing I really liked about this report that you have prepared is the focus on the social dialogue and the importance of social dialogue in this process of considering and improving the professional to address the professional needs of teachers, and this is key. I have been taking notes in a vigorous way, I must say, and I have shaped a phrase out of them concerning the social dialogue in order to really be able to address all these challenges we are facing concerning attractiveness and retention, attractiveness of the teaching profession and retention of teachers. The thing that we actually need is a representative, autonomous, empowered social dialogue with extended agenda. I'm sure that I am missing lots of words that you would probably mention, but these are the words I have spotted over the course of today. And of course, and that's obviously a model that we would like to achieve. And in fact, many of FE members work in this model. Others, at the national level, we can actually find everything. We can see social dialogues that are fully autonomous, that are fully empowered with decision-making powers. We can also see social dialogues that, let's say, social dialogue traditions that are not as developed, that are not autonomous, or that there's no employer at all. And in many countries, we actually face that with our federation, that we have a problem with defining who is the employer. At the EU level, we certainly have an extended agenda, because obviously we do not discuss salaries here at this level, as it is a competency of the member states. I think we have made certain progress in representation. We have managed to find some new employers and invite them to this table. We are autonomous. I think we are quite autonomous, thanks to the kindness of DG Employment. We do have a chance to shape our agenda and discuss issues of importance to us. I think we are also quite empowered. We have a status of consultative status of our decisions that we make. There is a challenge, however, I see, which is the fact that in some parts of European Commission and other EU institutions, we are not recognized as, or the role and importance of social partners is not recognized, is not seen. We recently have been, together with Susan, participating in a certain meeting in one of the DGs that we have been told, although they intend to enter the sphere of education within this DG, they did tell us that, in fact, importance of social partners is very limited to them, and the project and initiative that openly will affect our education sector will be carried out with us or without us. And finally, as I said, we have an extended agenda, and when we have been discussing all those issues over the course of today, I took a look on our website of education employers, and what I realized is that we have actually achieved quite a lot. We have been working on early careers of researchers. We have been working on school leadership. We have been working on OSHA issues, so occupational health and safety, psychosocial hazards. And now we are working on migration, EU values. As of next year, we hope to work also on vet in lifelong learning context. So all these things show that there's a purpose of all this, and that we have managed to achieve a great successes. Obviously, I see certain challenges, which some of them I already mentioned of, that we do not have very well defined employers in some countries, that there is obviously lots of work to do on implementation of our decisions at the national framework. But as it has been stated here, often education policy at the EU level is an offer. And we are here, it's a learning process, it takes time, the implementation always takes time. But on the positive side, I think, yes, we have achieved a great number of things. And over the period of these 2 years that I have the pleasure to serve to the employers as the General Secretary, I think we have made significant progress, and significant progress in not only identifying new employers and bringing them to the European table, but also in terms of recognition of our role in EU policy-making spheres. And I wanted to thank you all for this, because this is a joint success. We have been traveling to many countries together with Susan. Within the project on capacity building, we have visited many of your countries, and thanks to also your support on the trade union side, we have managed to bring new employers and to show the importance of this work here at the EU level. And so I hope to continue this work. In November this year, I will be asking my General Assembly to extend my mandate. So in case you don't see me afterwards, this means that there's been a problem. But I hope to see you all after November as well to continue this work, and I thank you for your involvement in it.
Daniel, thank you very much for those remarks. I think that speaks highly of the value that both the employers' organisation and ourselves as ETUCE place upon the social dialogue that we have at European level. And now I come to my friend and colleague, the European Director of ETUCE, to make the final remarks in this public hearing. Susan Flocken.
Thank you, Christine. And also thank you to you, Daniel. I actually wanted to start by a little joke, because you have seen this is a trade union, very trade union focused conference, and you have actually come and had the courage to come to our meeting and to discuss with us. And it is live streamed, exactly.
If I say something wrong, I'm going to be in trouble.
So this is this is a great sign, and I also would like to encourage by this meeting then also to have, as it's an open, this is a hearing for future hearings that we organize to have. I hope that we'll also have more of your members present with us in the meetings. So you've highlighted the role of our social dialogue. And what I would like to explicitly mention again is that the work that we do at European level is there to support the work that's going on at national level. So the main driver, we heard that clearly addressed when we started this morning, is quality education for all. Regardless of the socioeconomic background pupils come from, and of course providing these opportunities to teachers, to our future teachers, to those who are working in the sector and who form and train the future in our generation, in our countries, and the future in Europe. And in particular in these times, it's very important the work that is happening in education. We see in Europe a shift to the right. We see strong movements, populist movements, nationalist movements, and education here has a role to play to promote critically thinking young generation that is aware of its rights and obligations as a democratic citizen. And as we speak of this important role that education has, and we mentioned earlier the European education area, which does highlight and give a particular role to education, we see that there are many demands on education, many demands on the teachers and school leaders. We spoke about inclusion, special needs education, migration, the big influx since 2015 of migrants and refugees in Europe, and also the challenges of a changing society, of modern society, like digitalization, and we had an excellent example earlier of how that can be addressed. So there's a big need for teachers, for schools and the whole education systems to be prepared for this future, and for these challenges are there. And there's a big need for us in the European sector of social dialogue to take this up and to support the work that is going on at national level, at regional level. But what is very clear, and that I think has come out in the meeting that we had today, is that we need to do more to strengthen the social dialogue at national level, and to really have a meaningful social dialogue where social partners discuss and come together for an outcome. So that it's not only about consulting, but actually there's a meaning for it, and we're actually looking for a way forward. It has to be forward-looking. And so this, for me, is one of the crucial points as a European social partner, to be promoting the social dialogue at national level, raising awareness on the issues that are relevant in the daily work of teachers, and so raising awareness about them to governments, to education authorities, to the European institutions, and also referring to the European education area, thinking also about the European pillar of social rights, where education has a very priority role as well. And of course, at international level, the Sustainable Development Goals. And you know that at European level, these are also being addressed now and discussed for a 2030 agenda. So those, for me, are the most important points. And of course, as you mentioned, very importantly, the implementation. So we have to be as concise and concrete in the work that we do, to make sure that our voice is heard as social partners. Because the example that you mentioned of not being recognized as social partners is a very serious issue that we face in some places. And it's therefore very important that we have the European sector of social dialogue. We have our 2 meetings, our working groups on higher education, and the other one where we're more free in shifting on the topics that are of relevance, but also the plenary that we will have also in November, that we address these issues. And what I would like to see for the future, and when we discuss also for the next program, is we've seen that professional needs, not only in this project that we've been leading now as unions, but also in the capacity building project that you mentioned, where we had roundtables in different countries. This topic has been coming to us, emerged as a topic that is of great relevance, and it would be good to see that higher on our agenda for the future work program. So I hope that we can discuss this and have a look at that when we're planning our future terms. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Susan. I think both the employers and our union should feel that we're very well led by the colleagues who've just made their presentations. So this brings us to the end of the public hearing. I would like to thank all of you who have come and participated physically here, but I'd also like to thank anyone who has been watching us as it's been live streamed, and I remind you that it will still be available on Facebook and YouTube. My own final remarks would be these. I was very struck by Christian when he said that one of the things about teaching is that we have to find time to breathe. You know, sometimes when you're a teacher in a school, you feel like someone about to do 100 meters, which is that you don't have a chance to breathe until you get to the tape at the end. Well, we have to breathe during the day, but sometimes not adequately. So our approach to CPD, to professional learning, should be that, yes, indeed, we breathe, we reflect, we discuss, and thereby, the profession improves and develops. And it is by having a self-improving, self-aware profession that we're able to operate so much more effectively with our young people. Schools and universities, but also many other places, are essentially learning communities, and it's that to which we aspire. So I'd like to thank you very much for your attendance, for your participation, and I invite you all to continue the discussion as we have lunch outside. Thank you very much. But before we go, I must thank the interpreters who have done a fine job to ensure that everyone was able to access everything that was being said. Thank you very much. And I think colleagues who are joining us for this afternoon, which is that's just an ETUCE activity, the papers will be available at the registration desk, but I hope you all enjoy your lunch. Thank you. Oh.